Hello and welcome to episode 75 of Killer POV. I'm one of your hosts, Rob G from Icons of Fright. With me, beyond all this beer in my way.
Seasonal beer.
That I brought, by the way.
It's very festive.
Pumpkin.
Again.
Yeah.
Is Elric Kane.
Yeah, Elric, you
Tastes
never
good.
bring beer.
You know what the weird thing? It's like when I cook.
Once.
Beer tastes better when somebody else
I had
bought
to
it.
remind him
birthday.
that night. I texted him on the way and was like, don't
That's for
forget
your
the
birthday.
beer.
No, it does taste better when somebody else
When
buys
somebody
it.
else buys it. When it's not
it's
your
just
money.
the truth.
It's a better tasting beer. And also Rebekah McKendry from Fangoria.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
I'm ready to make a commitment on the show. You ready?
What kind of commitment?
I will commit to always buying you beer for the rest of your life once you have 2 children to pay for as well. So once you have 2 children, I will be your beer daddy.
Not worth it.
Yeah, I know.
Not
So
worth
you think
it.
about that. You
Isn't.
think about that for a minute, and I will be your
I
beer
did,
daddy.
and I'm already over it. Yeah.
All right, fair,
Yeah.
fair deal.
So-
So we'll just keep the relationship
How
as
about
it is.
2 cats? What if he gets 2 cats? Are
No.
you
No
a cat
dice.
dude?
No cats.
Not a cat dude.
Not
Dogs.
going to happen to cats. Dogs, I like dogs. 2 might be tough to handle.
I have 2.
But I'd like.
Once you have
I'd
2
like
of anything,
dogs.
then
It's
I'll start
kinda-
buying you beer.
2 of anything.
2 of anything.
Holy smokes! All right,
2 goldfish.
that's a good bet.
That is a pretty good bet.
Yeah, we need. You know what? Yeah, we need. I think the last several episodes, you and I have not been fueled.
We've been
with-
dry.
We've been dry, so we need to
Yeah.
get back on.
And we have to get ready because
Off
we
the
are coming up to
wagon, on the way.
October.
Yes.
And things like Beyond Fest next week. And it's just going to be pretty crazy for about the next 6 weeks, I'd say.
So we're
Yeah.
building our tolerance
Exactly.
for October.
We are
That's
getting
how I'm
ready.
going to look at it.
That's
Yeah.
great. It's like getting a base tan.
yeah. Space tan.
So,
But I'm already excited for everything. And if we set the scene, well, let's start with Monsterpalooza because you were there. I kind of only took it in marginally this time.
yeah, you got to make it at the last minute.
Yeah, and
on
it was only
Sunday.
for one
Did you
particular
show
thing.
up
But
on like the last hour on Sunday?
No, basically, I mean, I won't talk about Monsterpalooza as a whole. I'll just say, for me,
Well, yeah, you're part of it.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because I've gone to Monsterpalooza every year, and there are differences each time that are fun. But I don't like to say I'm over it because I think it's one of the best of all these kind of conventions. But it doesn't do the same thing it did to me the last couple times. If you know what I mean, like there's a little spark of excitement.
But
sometimes.
have you been to Son of Monsterpalooza ever?
I actually hadn't.
There's a big difference.
Yeah, there is,
Okay,
in
the
terms of
main
the amount of
Monsterpalooza is at the begining of the year, usually in March or April.
Which I went to. Yeah, it was
and
great.
that's the big one where it takes up the entire convention center and then the other room and stuff, and they have the museum and all that kind of stuff. Son of Monsterpalooza was always intended to be the slightly smaller second show of the year.
Strange that it wouldn't be cheaper then. Like $25 to get in is still a lot of money.
That's a very valid point.
Like, if
That's
it's
a very valid
$10
point.
and it's the smaller show.
It is this, yeah, but yeah, they compact it all just to the convention center, so it is a lot smaller of an affair. There's no museum there for this one.
So there was a couple cool things like with Elsa Lanchester's head.
Yes, they
cast in
made
a
up
million
for
ways.
it. There was, instead of the museum, they had 2 different rooms. One was a Clive Barker exhibit. Which, I'm sure, like a lot of fans out there, I've seen his work before. I've looked at it in books and stuff like that, and it looks really good. But, I mean, when you're in front of it, I didn't realize how huge his canvases were.
I must have missed that room. I've seen his stuff in like library before.
Oh my God.
but-
It's like the size of a wall, like every one of his pieces. So there was one little room that was all of his artwork set up. And again, it's amazing to see, but it was kind of neat. The other gimmick was that also Ashley Lawrence was in the room with her artwork because she's also an artist as well. So it was kind of neat to kind of delve into the world of Barker in this one little room. And then on your way out, it's like, oh, there's Ashley. And you can chat with her for a
She's
little
just
bit if
in
you
the
want
corner
to.
screaming, "You want it? You want it?" Yeah, anyway.
Pretty much. And then the next room over was this thing called It's Alive. It was the It's Alive project, which Elric just sort of mentioned. It was sponsored by, who are the guys that put it together? Muckle Bones LLC put it together. And essentially what they did is they got 90 artists together. And it's everybody from from the effects world, like guys like Steve Wang and guys like that. And each and every one of them got a bust of Elsa Lanchester's face from Bride of Frankenstein. And they were giving free reign from the original bust to do your version of Bride, any way you want. So then you walk in and you get to see, there was like the Bride of the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
there was, the Bride of the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Some of them had like full-fledged, like the actual castle built into her hair. It was like some really radical.
The funny thing is not
designs.
knowing what it was, because I walked in the back entrance, there was a line and I didn't even see it.
And you cut the line.
So I went through the whole thing and went backwards, and I just assumed it was like one artist who had done all these crazy
weird
pictures.
ones? No.
That's really cool to know. Was that? Yeah,
That's what it was. It was 90 artists with their interpretation. There's, the Bride of Frankenberry. There was one like that. I personally love the David Bowie one, which was the Bride of Aladdin Sane.
Oh, Aladdin Sane.
Which is really great. So that was pretty neat.
If
you look online, you'll see tons of pictures of it all. But But yeah, the convention itself was cool. I got to do 2 panels. I did a panel for Phantasm and Texas Chainsaw. Both of them went great. The neat thing, I got to give a lot of credit to Elliot Brodsky. He's the guy that is responsible for Monsterpalooza, fellow Long Islander from New York. And what we do with a lot of the retro panels, or what I find interesting, is because, like most horror fans, we've been to these a million times. We've heard a lot of the same stories. I don't know where we came up with the idea, but Elliot selects several clips from the movie. And what we do is we play a 2-3 minute clip, and people see it, and then we all talk about it on stage. And what's cool about it is a lot of these people are signing there. So as a fan in the audience, you're watching these clips and getting into it, and it's always fun to watch it with an audience. And then, afterwards you're like, man, I remember how much I love this movie. I'm going to go meet them or whatever. So I think it's a fun way, interactive way to kind of get the audience and the guests on the same page. And, I've seen the Phantasm movies. I like them. I don't fully get them all. There's so much weird mythology, but I'd never experienced anything from the first one on the big screen. So hearing people laugh and react to it, like, I have to see Phantasm with an audience at some point. Like, that's
I'm really hoping that
it.
somebody will play it during this lead up to Halloween.
Yeah,
one of these
me too.
all-nighters.
Me too.
If I get word that it's at any, I'm going no matter what time.
And I know, Becky, you haven't seen it either.
I've never seen it.
I feel like you should see it
I've
that
only seen it on
way.
VHS, and I love it, but
Yeah.
I've only seen it on VHS like twice in my life, and I've
Yeah.
been dying to wait for a good version.
This has been one that I've been waiting for because
Because it is dark. It plays pretty dark.
see, and I've seen part 2, and I was kind of like, meh. And so I never really saw the first one because I saw part 2 on television
part
years
one
ago,
is a
and I
lot
was just
better.
kind of like, I don't see the need to go back to see the first one now. But everyone has talked about it, so yes, I'm a Phantasm virgin.
Yeah, hopefully I'll play
Yeah.
it. If it plays, we'll all go.
Yeah, we should. I mean, I didn't realize how funny it was. That's the thing.
Yeah, I don't
that
remember
the
that.
humor plays out perfectly with an audience. But it went well. I mean, I got them to talk a little bit about Phantasm 5, which essentially was one of these things where, Don was working with the director David Hartman, who I believe is primarily an effects guy and does a lot of digital effects. He worked on Bubba Hotep and John Dazdian. And I think they were just talking on John Dazdian. And he was telling Don, like, this guy Dave buys a new piece of software, and then that weekend he'll go and shoot something just to test it out. And I think they were just getting ready for John Dazdian. He's like, man, let's go shoot a scene from a Phantasm movie. Let's just go shoot something. And he's like, all right, and calls up Reggie, and then they're in the desert shooting a scene from Phantasm. And then the next weekend came, and they're like, let's do another scene. It's like, all right, let me call Michael. So essentially, they just started making it without any
Total DIY.
They're like, wait a minute,
Phantasm.
we're making a new Phantasm. This is crazy. So that's essentially what they did. Is on the weekends they would just go shoot stuff, and before they knew it, they had.
And Don had no interest in directing another.
No, well, it was more like he was so intrigued by David's passion for it and how he kept, I think he was like, well, this is what we could shoot. He gave him the idea and maybe the script or whatever. But he's like, you direct it. You direct it.
Cool.
These are your new tools. You know what you're doing with this stuff. So I thought that was fascinating. And they said, they're still working on it, but hopefully it'll be out sometime next year.
Awesome.
And they'll both come on this show when Phantasm 5 is ready.
And then I have to watch 1 through 4.
And then,
all
you
in
do.
a
Yeah,
soup.
we'll watch all of them
Marathon
leading
it.
on.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
yeah, that was great. And then lastly, the Chainsaw panel I thought went really well. I mean, the 40th anniversary came out this week. I'm sure a lot of listeners have probably picked it up.
Great, yeah.
Stellar release. We showed clips, we talked. It was great. The only, it got really emotional talking about Marilyn Burns.
Because it's so soon.
Because
yeah.
it just happened, and it was like, we showed a scene with her and Paul Pertain, who's also no longer with us. The Paul Pertain stories were fun because, he's been gone for a little while, but they all hated him during the making of the movie. And Gunnar was explaining it wasn't until 20 years later that I met up with him again. And I'm like, this is a really lovely guy. But back then he was a method actor and he was Franklin on set.
Right.
And
so he was totally annoying.
Nobody everybody got to get along with him.
And that translates perfectly.
Perfectly, yes.
to
Because
Scrimm.
you
because
feel the
I'm not
same
kidding.
way.
And I know I get quoted a lot about it. I really do think he's the most hateable character in fictional filmmaking.
Oh, yeah.
Narrative, horror, whatever you want
no.
to. I don't think there's
Totally
ever been a
agree.
character I've disliked more on
Right.
screen. Which you feel bad because he's also crippled. So you feel kind of there's a little sting in hating him
no
so
excuse.
much. No, exactly. That's the problem.
That's
it's
no
excuse. Makes
excuse.
you
I
feel
think
bad.
you guys are heartless.
Probably
honestly.
true.
but yeah, it was good. And then once Marilyn Burns came up, it got very emotional both on stage and off. I think the audience felt it too. And Terry McMinn, who plays Pam,
Yeah.
the whole audience just sunk when she's like, well, she was my best friend.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody just, and Gunnar and Edwin started tearing up and crying on stage. I was like, oh man.
Edwin seemed like a real sweetheart. I was like standing where they were signing. He was like playing with two little girls. I don't know if they're his or friends of his, but he seemed like one of the nicest. And he's the hitchhiker.
He is, yeah.
If you don't realize he's the hitchhiker, and to me, that's like maybe the most effective character in the whole movie in a way.
For sure.
And because it really is the start of what unsettles you about the whole film. And so
That's my favorite line.
Oh, really?
Got this knife. It's a good knife.
Yeah. He's so great, but yeah, he is a very warm and funny, joking character. So to see him get serious for just a moment, and I said it on the show, I said it when we saw it again, and I totally mean it. I said it on stage too. It's like, not for nothing, but Marilyn Burns brings, like, of all the analytical articles and the things that have been written about the final girl, about the survivor girl, there is no one that's ever going to top her performance. Like,
that's the funny
word
about performance, right?
Character that's been that committed. Yeah, I mean, it's
emotion. I think in horror, unlike drama, where like she wouldn't win an Oscar for best dramatic performance if she was over in Meryl Streep role, but in a horror film, that's translating pure emotion. That's as good as it could ever get.
Yeah,
it's
that last 20, 30 minutes of her,
it's really kind of
I don't know anyone that
something,
comes close to that. So.
No, I agree. I completely agree. Often people are pretending to be like that.
Yeah.
And they're also final girls tended to get too empowered as it went. It feels like to the point where they're almost Terminators.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really, it's not real anymore.
She was empowered,
she was vulnerable,
but not, she wasn't like super.
And she's losing her mind. And, I think it's just I think what she shows is it has nothing to do with any secret ability. She has what a woman, let's say a mother sees a car about to hit her child. She has that.
It's just
that momentary burst
to
of
live.
Exactly,
anyway,
of adrenaline.
No matter what, it's like her desire, like, I'm going to survive, like, it's amazing.
That's cool. No, that I wish I had gone to that panel. I think I came right after. The only reason I went, and it's very short, but Mike Vraney, I have a couple heroes in life who are more like film curators or people who say film, and he's always been one for me. And Something Weird was one of those few labels that even in New Zealand that meant something to me, largely because the logo and the trailers would always lead me to other things, and some I wouldn't even like. But
were you able to find Something Weird stuff?
Yeah, Something Weird came to New Zealand. Yeah.
Wait, did you guys have
this
something? Because I know when I was on the East Coast, Something Weird had an entire channel. It was like a VOD channel.
We didn't have anything like that.
So much good stuff on it. And
I think I
only had that on the East Coast.
And I think a section at Kim's Underground, I think that's how I discovered them.
And I have to say, the new Delirium, Chris,
it's all about it.
For Full Moon, it's wonderful.
And what's special about it at the start? You just missed the opening, but at the opening they showed. So Mike Vraney basically founded Something Weird Video, and he has literally saved. They had some testimonials of people who were good friends, and these are the guy who runs the Grindhouse Film Festival in LA and the Film and Poster Shop, and just different people who met him. And the first story they all told, which was just hilarious, is they owned the rights to all of Herschel Gordon Lewis's films. This is like about 15 years ago, and they were going to a convention. So this is the guy who runs the Grindhouse Film Festival and his partner, and somebody says, hey, that guy, Mike Vraney, the guy who is selling bootlegs of Herschel Gordon Lewis at conventions, we own the rights. This guy, should we go meet him? He's at this thing. And this guy's like, we have to go meet him. And they go meet him, and they said, within like 2 hours, we're basically best friends with this guy who was ripping us off. And then we gave the entire catalog to him, and then he sold it legit. He's like, I want to come legit. Oh, this is great. Let's do it. He was that kind of guy. Like, he could win them over with a conversation. And it really was a beautiful, the tributes are really beautiful, I thought, but they showed like a 5-minute thing of him from being a baby to being an adult of 2 kids who then graduate college, and then he dies at 50-odd from lung cancer. It was pretty tough to watch for me, like, just not even knowing the guy, just going, wow, it's like, it's life. You don't know what's going to happen. But the central message of what Mike did, and I think why we deify filmmakers a lot, like, that Stanley Kubrick, what a legend. But this guy literally saved, they were telling me, like maybe like 15,000 movies would not exist at all if he had not saved them. And the reason the volume's so high is what he would often do. Besides, hey, here's Herschel Gordon Lewis, and I find this lost film and I clean up. What he did,
Doris Wishman films.
Yeah, Doris Wishman. What he would do is he would go to if there was a major, basically, film's dying. There's still 35 going to be made, and Quentin's going to keep 35, but it's dying. It's still dying, whatever, and it's close to dead. And so what would happen is, with so much less being shot, often what would happen is somebody would have their negative, stored in one of these warehouses that would keep it at a certain temperature or whatever. Well, they're going out of business. They go out of business, and they have 1,000 movies in there that the filmmakers haven't kept up their payments. Yeah. They're about to go under, and they literally go, I'm going to fucking throw it away.
Yeah,
it's all going to go into a bit. So that's when Mike would come in and go, okay, I'm just going to buy all of this. And a lot of it's, crap, the stuff I don't even need to watch, like nudie cutie films from the 50s. But it's still important.
Rock.
Well, I personally don't have any interest, but I have a real interest in them surviving.
Yeah.
And the archive of humankind, which is what film is, you know. Anyway, so it was, really emotional to hear all these people talk about him. But the one thing that we both got out of this is when you did show up, they showed some trailers, and one trailer was so incredible, which I had to write down. It is called The God Monster of, let me just make sure I get it right, The God Monster of the Indian Flats. And
right.
And it is some sort of mutant sheep, snuffleupagus, I would call it.
Oh, my God.
Who is descending on a school kid's party, and then they all scream and run away, and then suddenly some guy blows up a petrol station. But I looked it up since, and it's like this crazy looking, I guess it's a horror Western. It looks like it's made for $2, shot on film, and it just looks so... It's one of those trailers you see and go, I just love that somehow a movie like that got made in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I could even watch the whole thing.
Yeah. They showed a whole trailer reel, and this was one of them.
That was definitely the standout.
When I got in to sit with you for it, that's what came up. But that's the thing. It's like, it looks like this weird, cheap, like, monster. You can't even make it out.
Okay, I have to have this.
But they spent money to blow up a freaking gas station.
Yeah, fucking gas
So
station.
like,
the guy drops a cigarette, and it blows up again. So you're like, what? How did
I feel like they did that. They're like, we got a movie
Yeah,
But I love
it's like a trauma film. Well, we flipped a car, guys. We can make it into a movie.
You know, those homemade movies at that point in time in the 60s and 70s are just incredible. Like, and the God Monster of, Indian Flats. It's like, what the hell does that even mean?
Amazing, yeah.
So it was worth it and that's honestly the only reason I went this year is because I just really wanted to see anything. It's weird how you can have personal connections to people you don't meet. And I think the internet has increased that. And this is pre-internet for me, like just seeing this magazine. And I feel the same about, Psychotronic Film Guide. There's certain people.
That's a big one for me.
That's
I have
like
the
my favorite
collection.
thing.
I own the whole thing.
No, that to me is like, I read that and I find new interviews with people. And, there's just some magazines where you feel you connect more than others. I mean, it's just all personal, but that was Something Weird was always a label. Now, the cool thing, the final thing I'd say is the guy who runs Grindhouse. And honestly, for people who don't live here, this could be
Bob
worth
or
traveling.
Dave?
Not Bob Murawski, not Grindhouse releasing, Grindhouse Film Festivals.
Oh, okay.
So,
Brian Quinn.
Brian Quinn and Eric, the poster shop guy. Can't remember what his name is. It's more him because he was good friends. He's the one who owned the rights to Herschel Gordon stuff. They are going to, in January, when the New Beverly finishes the 3-month Quentin run, in January, he is going to spend an entire day, so from like morning to midnight, showing Something Weird films on 35 and trailers and stuff, and it's completely free. And you can come in and out the whole day. The idea is to do it like just stuff all day, and it's a tribute to him. And any donations will go to cancer research, the kind of cancer that Mike died from. So that's cool. Like that's the kind of event that is worth traveling for.
The Killer POV team will be there.
I'll definitely. I mean, that's the kind of thing because it's going to be stuff you can't curate for yourself. It's the kind of stuff you're like, I would never think to watch that movie.
Have they set a day for that yet?
No, because there's a lot of unsure things about
We should make a bet between the three of us who lasts the longest.
probably be Becca once it goes nudie cutie film.
Probably, because I've seen some of the Something Weird movies, and I don't think I could last.
Some of them are really hard to watch.
Let alone 2 hours.
But I will say, The Curious Dr. Hump is a masterpiece. If you're going to ever watch The Curious Dr. Hump, you will be a better person for it. So yeah, that was my Monsterpalooza.
All right. What have you guys seen?
You start?
Yeah. Well, actually, I spent my weekend kind of cleaning out my DVD and VHS collection because I had just renovated a house.
And finding magic bullets and odd other things.
Crazy things.
What the hell happened to that house of yours?
I don't know. We found an AK-47 round.
That was me.
I was strapping up some of the pipes under the house on Saturday morning, and underneath the house, I found an AK-47 round, and it was really, really weathered. And so, yeah, that was just kind of, I was kind of like,
you can't take credit for that.
Fired an AK-47 round.
Whoever killed the women that had all those keys.
Yeah, exactly. I made
Who said they're women, Rob?
Well,
okay, I have to. This is my own little joke, but some of the people who have come over to the house have been kind of creeped out by it. So I made the keys into a wind chime, and then I put it in the backyard.
That is pretty creepy.
That is creepy.
Oh, I think it's hilarious. So
you never called the cops about that?
No.
That could be the clue.
I was talking with the neighbor, and the neighbor said that the woman and we found out the story about the woman who used to run the house. She actually worked on the Lucy show. And and she apparently lived by herself there. She worked on the Lucy show for years and years. And when she got older, she had a caretaker who would come and take care of her. And apparently he did this for and kill women. And apparently he did this for a couple of different people, and he was like a caretaker by trade. So they thought maybe it was his keys. But then I was like, why would he have all these keys and leave them in a freaking shoebox in the back? But
was his name the Zodiac?
Yeah.
I made him into a wind chime and hung it in the backyard. And I keep walking outside going, these are my little chickies. And
you're not at all creepy, I think.
It's hilarious.
All right.
Yeah, I like to assume that it's, they're nothing and
sure,
think
make
on the
light of a mass
positive
murder.
side.
It's totally fun.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
Anyway, so I spent my weekend cleaning out my DVDs and VHS because they've been stashed in the garage for a couple of weeks now, and I was kind of going through withdrawals. So I pulled them all out, and I went through and I parsed out my VHS copies to if it was available on DVD for under $20. I ordered the DVD instead of the VHS, which was a big thing for me because previously I was always like, no, VHS is sacred.
Nope.
Or if it had cool covers. But what I've discovered is, especially now with HD, I can't even watch something in SD anymore. Like it hurts my brain. I tried watching a Law and Order that wasn't in HD a couple of nights ago, and I was like, I can't even watch this. And
once you have the HD TV, it's even hard to put a DVD on.
It is.
Like you're just like, but it doesn't look as good.
And so then I went through this. Well, am I more concerned about, keeping the box art and things like that? Or would I rather have the higher upgrade of the image? And then I was like, fuck's box art. I can always find it online if I really want to look at it that much. I'd rather have the higher upgrade. And so then I parsed my VHS collection down to things that were not available in any other format. That's the only reason I kept them, is if either the DVD was like hundreds of dollars, like Begotten, Elias Mirhinge,
or the Beyond or something. Not the Beyond, sorry, Society and things like
I have
that.
Society, things like that. The ones where it's like, I have the VHS, it's an original VHS, or I could buy the DVD for like hundreds of dollars, which is never going to happen.
There's like a real nerd out there somewhere right now jerking off. To you talking about reorganizing your VHS collection, there's someone just going, wait, did you do alphabetical? Oh, yeah.
I did do alphabetical, but since I was going through it, I decided, since I was
Sorry,
going
was Jim Warnowski not here? I'm not allowed to say things like this?
I decided to go through and start watching some of the things that I owned on VHS that I'd never seen before, that I, was kind of excited about. And I found this one at the Goodwill in Glendale while getting my car fixed, which was a whole nother story. But while I was there, I walked over to the Glendale Goodwill while they were fixing my car, and I found a big box version of something called Devil's Nightmare. And I was totally excited about it because it's really sweet box art and I couldn't find anything else on it. It's a big box and the cover's really trippy and has no information on it whatsoever. And it turns out it's a American version of an Italian film that has quite possibly the coolest soundtrack ever. So I'm going to be watching that this week. But last night, trying to get my way through the DVD or the VHS I own, I watched Spasms from 1981. This is Oliver Reed and Peter Fonda fighting a giant snake.
Wow.
Weird, because Oliver Reed also had snakes with Kinski in Venom.
Yes. Venom was a very boring movie. I can't say Spasms was that great either. So
I kind of like Venom, but it's not great.
I always thought Venom was kind of a slow burn. Spasms is a ridiculously slow burn. You're kind of just like waiting for something to happen. Instead of seeing the snake through most of the film, you get kind of the Evil Dead cam where you're being chased by a camera snake. And the cool thing about it was Dick Smith did the effects. So there's like some really cool, like, oh, I've been bitten by a snake and my head's exploding
how old?
effects. Pardon?
How old?
1981.
Oh, 81. Okay.
Yeah. And it never made it to DVD, or if it did, it's ridiculously expensive. I can't remember which. But I'm kind of a purist when it comes to snake movies. I do enjoy my snake movies. So I had to check this one out. And I'd seen it when I was a kid, but it'd been a while. The weird thing about it is apparently the production, it's Canadian production. Apparently it ran out of money right at the very end. So the last 10 minutes of the movie, the climax, are like all flashback.
Oh.
And it's kind of like a weird,
that's brutal.
And then the credits roll and you're like, what just happened? So yeah.
You got to save that flashback for when it really matters.
Yeah.
And that is not the end of your movie.
Blend it into the front.
I am sorry.
But it was kind of a strange ending. But Dick Smith effects, you finally do get to see this giant snake and after the flashbacks. So that kind of makes it worthwhile. And then from more recent, I watched Hellbenders, which is J.T. Petty's new one.
Oh, cool.
Wait, didn't you just review it?
Yeah, that's the one I talked about last week.
Remember in 3D? Did you watch in 3D?
I did not. I don't have a 3D television.
Then that's the end of that review.
You should have come over.
I know, I should have. I really liked it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was cool, right?
I did. I thought it was really cool.
I don't think it's great, but it's unique and cool.
It was unique, cool. It was, you know how much I dig horror comedies. It's kind of like, it's the films I want to be making. And so, yeah, I loved the humor in it. I loved some of the absurdity.
I said this last week, the reveal for why a superhero's secret identity can never be Clint.
Hilarious.
Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
That was the greatest
part
of the movie.
Because it's like an ongoing joke, and it's one of those things like, what the hell?
Why can't a superhero be named Clint?
And when they reveal it, I laughed. So I fell off my couch laughing so hard.
Is the 3D good?
No, I had to.
3D's great.
Okay, so
yeah.
it's worth seeing in 3D.
And like I said last week, like Larry's the first person you see, Larry Fessenden. So I was like totally.
Wait, is Larry
hilarious.
Fessenden the guy who's going to be on our show in October?
Yes.
Oh, that guy?
The guy that's going to be here for Halloween.
Oh, the guy's going to be here for our Halloween
That
episode?
guy.
That's cool.
That guy.
There were some moments in it where the CG kind of got to me. Maybe they looked a little bit better in 3D, but it was made by a company called The Molecule that I'd never heard of before, but some of the CG seemed a bit kind of, you know.
That CG is a lot more forgivable in 3D.
Yeah, makes sense.
You know?
Yeah, watching it on my 2D, I mean, I was watching it, you know, incredibly high def because that's my thing now, apparently. But yeah, great plot and good acting regardless. It was just a hilarious movie to begin with.
But now you have to watch Blue Ruin to see Macon Blair in it.
Okay.
Because Macon Blair, he was like the guy that had like a little boyfriend with him and then he ends up in the cast.
He's in the full body cast. He was hilarious.
And that's the thing, he's a funny guy, but you watch Blue Ruin and you're like, I can't believe that's the same guy because he gives like such an amazing dramatic performance. So I don't know. I'm curious how it'll work for you because I saw it the opposite where I was like, oh, he's supposed to be a funny guy. I get it. All right.
See, I have to watch Blue Ruin because I didn't even realize this, but one of my absolute best friends from Virginia did all the effects on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And there's some good
I
ones.
think some of them are
There's
from
some
there.
Shelley
good-
Elmency. So, she did all the effects makeup on it. So I
Yeah, it's
got to
very
watch
simple,
it now.
but it's very good. Cool. Okay. I'm kind of still going through my list. Hidden Horror, the book. There was a film that was like less of a horror title. I think it was Chris Alexander. I'd have to look it up again, but when I first wrote it down, I love my favorite kind of movies of the whole world are, you know, because I like art house, I like horror. My favorite is like, you know, those kind of crime extreme films from America in the 70s, you know, but just American 70s filmmakers. So you'll discover some lost Dustin Hoffman film like Straight Time where he robs a bank and you're like, I haven't heard of that one. And suddenly it's great. So this is a Bruce Dern starring film called Tattoo.
Oh,
I had only heard a little bit about Tattoo, but I found the VHS it had an extra few minutes that was lost in the American release, and it's only on VHS. I found it at Eddie Brandt's. This film, very interesting. I would give it a 3 out of 5 star as a movie, as a thriller. It's kind of like Maniac light. He's not as crazy as Maniac, but he basically is a really talented tattoo artist, Bruce Dern, which is pretty bizarre.
When did this come out?
It's like maybe it's 80, but maybe it's like 78 or 79. You know,
Wait,
so it's kind of.
Significantly pre-burbs.
I'm going to say this
Bruce
about
Dern was a tattoo artist in the late 70s.
I think he comes from. I think he comes
movie.
from the war. I think the opening scene, he's been at war and he sees Japanese tattoo art, and I think he's inspired. And then it just cuts to him, and he's this really talented artist. They basically hire him for a high-end model shoot to paint tattoos on these models, and he becomes obsessed with this model. And basically, by the end, he abducts her and takes her to this old beach house, and basically wants to cover her in a full body tattoo, because he believes it's the mark that then marks you. Now, I'm going to say this about
a cool concept.
No, I think this is a really good film. It's like it's just not a great film. At certain key like thriller horror moments, it could have gone almost a little further. But this is what I'm going to say about this movie, and this is why it's essential viewing for people if you're like me and you would like to see all these great American movies. I've always questioned whether Bruce Dern was a great actor. I've always known he's a very good actor, and I like him. But the thing is, his personality is so much of that performance because he's always playing the kind of gregarious, kind of fun, kind of over the top, and he has a big personality. Obviously, in Nebraska, he had to dial it way back, but that's not the hard. People always give people who dial back performances a lot of credit, and that's not the hardest thing to do. This is, I think, maybe the best performance I've seen him give, but it's also the most different of all the films I've ever seen. This is the performance that made me realize he's a great actor because it's dark. It's like he's trying to be a really good guy. He's kind of a Leave It to Beaver time period. He believes like, a woman shouldn't cuss, and he gets really upset at her when she starts swearing or talking about sex, and he's like really possessive, but he's also like, you kind of like him, and he's strong. And it is like nothing I've seen him do. And after the movie, I was like, wow, you're a really great actor. Like, this is the most different Bruce Dern role. So I don't know anything about the production history. I know the director made only one movie.
And it's only on VHS at this point?
It's only on VHS. I don't know why. And I never would have looked up if it wasn't in that hidden horror book. And I'm pretty sure it's Chris who looked up from...
Have you ever seen The Driver?
Yeah. He's great in that.
He's great.
But again, I think that favors his personality.
Yeah.
It's not, and that's not even a bad thing. Like Jack Nicholson has a whole career doing his personality. It's more just like sometimes you question, I wonder if you can do anything else, and then you see them go, and you go, wow, you really can do something else. So I would definitely watch it. I mean, if it plays in a theater, man, jump all over that thing. So that was really cool. Finally getting to see that. That was one VHS. The big one that when we talked about our anthology episode that I hadn't seen, because I'd been told it sucked, is the Brian Yuzna Necronomicon.
Our anthology episode sucked. I liked
way
the
back.
Brian
Yuzna
man,
this thing
Necronomicon.
was fantastic. And
I thought it was great.
The best thing about me going to Monsterpalooza is I went to the bootleg table, and I would have probably spent $100 because I saw so many movies I've been meaning to see, but I was so scared that the quality would be crap.
It's not.
It wasn't. This came straight off a Laserdisc onto a DVD.
Oh, wow.
Most of the time when I have purchased bootlegs, they are very...
I think they're high end
They come
here.
from nerds like us, so like most of the bootleggers, and I hate to say that, I would even do that, but most of... Again,
I think there's nothing wrong with bootlegging things that aren't available.
That's all I do. If it's not available, if no one's making money
DVD.
off of it, then I kind of do it without
This
regard.
film,
but
I understand now why it didn't do well. Because it's a throwback Lovecraftian monster movie anthology, and it's in 93. It's 93. The 93 is the problem. It's coming when we're getting into young slasher films are just about to take off, and I think it came at the end, but I remember avoiding it. I can't remember. I remember it coming out on video and going, I don't want to, hearing something about it. It's fantastic.
Are great.
Honestly, the effects are some of the best I've seen in recent years. It is so fun, and it's actually one of the reason I went to see it after we did our anthology. I was looking up a list on Letterboxd, and every review of it was like kind of a rave saying, how is this film not out? So I was like, okay, you got my interest. It's 3 directors. One of them did Christopher Gans, French guy, did Brotherhood of the Wolves. It's his first film. Wow. Then it's a guy called, I'm going to fuck up his name, Shisuke Kuniko, who did the Death Note films, and this is early on in his career too. And then Brian Yuzna does the wraparound and the final story. The wraparound and the way it goes into the stories is, as good as any really good anthology film, because usually that's the weakest thing. I mean, Jeff Combs as Lovecraft is really surprising because he is the opposite of Lovecraft. Lovecraft's really tall and so basically he's got a lot of makeup and he's almost unrecognizable. He has his voice is the only tip. He actually looks a little like Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead 2 when he kind of goes monster. He has just a different look. He's under a lot of makeup. Hits Lovecraft. He goes into an old library and he wants to get the Necronomicon, and basically stuff starts going wrong as he goes into each story. I would go so far as to say I really love this film, and I think this is like one of those anthologies that people will have an absolute blast if they can track down. And all 3 of them were good. The first one's dramatically, I think it's Gans, is a little clunkier. It's a guy who takes over like a nice hotel, but the effects are phenomenal. Like this giant monster with tentacles and these weird like squid faces that open up.
And the monsters are really good because one of the things I've talked about this on the show before, how Lovecraft is always so impossible to do like reinventions of, because he always is like a creature of unimaginable description and everything is so vague, and he's got all these interdimensional things that you just can't picture. I mean, they're fucked up to read, but you can't picture.
One thing they did that was
movie
smart.
Does it well.
They are the big monster, puppet kind of thing. But the smaller versions where it's like somebody who's died has come back to your life and they start kissing you, but then they close up on their face. And I think they used the real squids on each one. So it's an open squid coming at you, and it really is effective on a human face. I'd be shocked if it wasn't a real one. And it was a great effect. But the third one is Yuzna's, which felt a little maniac copish. It's like a cop on the chase and gets led into this old building, and you realize there's this evil thing. You get into the bottom of this thing, you're just like, man, we have lost so much with losing practical monster effects. It is unbelievable. The work being done in this movie that is all but forgotten, this Necronomicon, that is just sitting on a shelf, not even on freaking DVD as far as I know.
It isn't.
It's definitely not on Blu-ray, definitely deserving. Has some of the most, it has a whole character break down, like basically melting to death, which is about as fun as anything I've seen this year. I'm going to chase it though. You didn't think I could top it. I saw a movie I liked even more.
Oh man.
This is my last one. I'm going to be quick.
Okay.
I promise. This is a direct response to a Twitter follower who I think it's Dan Gorman. Thank you, Dan, very much. When I talked about the Prodigy last weekend, which is, we're obsessed with these childbirth. Was it Prodigy? Yeah. The one that Jordan did? Prophecy. That's not the Prophecy.
No, wait. You saw the one that you saw last week?
Yeah.
The Unborn.
The Unborn. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
The Unborn, I can't remember the moment. So yeah, The Unborn, he wrote to me going,
remember
hey.
it next week when the
exactly.
director's on the show.
I just saw
That's
baby
right.
on a pile with a knife in its hand at the end.
Which is a lot of fun. This guy, Dan, wrote to me and said, that you like that one. It was a good write-up. You should, a good talk-up or whatever. You should, have you seen The Kindred? And I was like, I know the VHS cover of The Kindred.
Yeah, me too.
But I didn't know. So I went to Eddie Brandt and saw if it was there. It's only on VHS. I'm going to go on record and say, there's no movie on earth that I've seen in the last 5 years that I would rather screen on 35 than this movie. This movie,
what? More than Possession?
Oh yeah, because Possession's out there now, so it's kind of out of Society. Let me put it this way: it even tops Society for me for what I. And I'll tell you why.
Smokes.
And you'll appreciate that, and so will you, because of the comedy angle. This movie had more laugh out loud moments. I'm just watching it at home. I started. The drama initially, I kind of laugh at it. It's kind of it literally has a guy runs out into a hallway and just goes, "Hey, Dr. Winston, my mother finally woke up," and he's like, "Oh, great, kid." And then you're like, "But what? I didn't know she was in I didn't know she was in coma." Anyway, it starts going. The drama, I'd say, is borderline fairly clunky. The setup's pretty clunky. It's these scientists. It's got Rod Steiger
I'm
as a
still
scientist.
waiting for the greatest film ever made moment here.
Well, no, it's coming up. It will come up. But Rod Steiger is a scientist, and they basically this guy's mom's died, and she's done these crazy experiments. She's like, "Oh, your brother," and he's like, "Brother? I don't have a brother." And so him and a bunch of scientists go back to her house to kind of figure out what was going on. Their tapes, whatever. The main thing about this film that is so freaking fun is there's laugh out loud moments in the drama and the some definitely feel like they're meant to be there, but in a crowd, I think they'll kill. But what's truly amazing is the score, and I looked the film up afterwards, and there's a lot of talk. I think it's the first score by a horror composer. I can't remember his name, and it goes for a lot online, and it's a great score. But the effects in this movie and the monster effects are so much fun. I mean, it's just like Nekronomicon. This film is the most fun. I'm not even kidding. This is the most fun I've had watching them, like any of these movies I've been researching. And it's definitely not on quality level, because the tone isn't like what I would want to make, but it's everything I want to watch sometimes,
Man.
And this film would crush in a packed theater. It would just absolutely kill. And here's the interesting thing. So I looked up afterwards. It's by 2 directors, and it had 5 writers, including the writer of Psycho. He's the 5th writer. He came on, and so there's a little bit of that. I can see where he comes into it. But it's the duo who directed The Dorm That Dripped Blood,
which was a horrible movie.
And exactly what I was going to get. I'm not actually Jeffrey Albert and Stephen Carpenter. I'm not a fan of that film, and so it's another one of those ones that some people.
Okay.
The release is cool, and I'm all for seeing it. But I remember just going, it's clunky.
That's the one where the guy just shows up at the end, and he's like, "Hey guys, you know what? I did it.
Yeah,
exactly.
I did it.
Exactly.
I kind of love that.
But they made 3 films together. There's another one called The Power. I haven't seen that. It looked kind of crazy. All the reviews I was reading on Letterboxd were like, The Kindred is like the one where they hit it. Like, they knocked it out of the park. I don't know
so pumped.
I've got this on VHS, so I'll just bring it around. This film.
Here's why I'm pumped is because years ago I had a friend that worked on the convention circuit that worked for one of these bootleg people or whatever, and just randomly, I can't remember what it was. I must have I did something. Maybe I gave her a ride somewhere or whatever. And as a token of appreciation, she gave me 6 movies that weren't available on DVD. I think I'm 99% positive because I just opened up the box.
Well, you want to know what it will come from?
I'm pretty sure I have The Kindred on
I can
DVD.
tell you where it came from because I've been looking on eBay last night. There is a laser disc of it. So probably. Yes. And so when I was at the same convention 2 days ago, I thought about buying it because it was there, but I hadn't seen it. On DVD. And I was like, should I get it? I haven't seen it. I shouldn't get it. And the cover is so great that I should have just bought it.
That's the first thing I'm going to do as soon as I
get
home.
This film is straight up
Kindred.
Entertainment. And if you can watch it with a friend, you'll just, I was laughing just at the drama stuff, and not in a really bad way, but more in a genuinely inventive, funny way. But the effects are so freaking fun. And it's fairly pardon me, Lovecraftian, and in terms of the monster.
Did you just hiccup or
No,
sneeze?
it's a weird inverted burp that we do down under when we drink too much beer. It's like you're trying to suppress it, but it comes out anyway.
What is wrong with you people?
I don't know.
You don't drink with us every week, so you don't
Exactly.
understand.
I've been coughing my head off. I can't talk.
But I don't know enough about it, but I will. I'm not kidding where I say if we can find a way to get a screening of this, like a print, if we could track down renting a print and take out a theater and show this movie as a group, it'd be the most fun you'll have at the movies, because it's really a great little movie. And Rod Steiger, gets all the crazy hammy moments you could wish for at the end. But I wish I knew a little more about the production history. But what I did read is it has 5 writers. Like, so obviously somebody wrote the screenplay and then it got kind of tweaked 5 times, including Joe Stefano. Which is kind of crazy,
right?
But no, it's really good, and what I think I'm going through this period, looking through some of these films, and it's just reiterating, man, that the love of horror came from a young age, and it comes from monsters. It comes from, it's not the slasher. Slasher films are what you started to like a lot when you're, hit puberty or 13. But they're saying in these monster effect movies that are just so fun, even when it looks unrealistic. You don't care, you go along with the ride, so I wish there was more talk of this movie, but maybe we can be the ones who show it.
We bring the Kindred back, and
the Kindred deserves it.
Before we jump to our guest, I just want to say
I have one movie
Rob has
too.
a movie too.
Yeah, let's do Rob's movie.
Is our guest here?
Yes.
Yes.
He's
I
been,
didn't see him
he's
coming.
been texting me.
I didn't even see him coming.
Last 2 minutes you've been doing that. The one movie I saw, last night I was trying to find something to watch, and I couldn't freaking settle on anything. And then finally, I remembered that I actually have fond memories of the early Fangoria movies, like the first Fangoria produced stuff. So like Children of the Night is one that I remember liking quite a lot.
What was that one that we had that had Bruce Campbell in it?
Oh, I'm going to tell you because I watched it.
Okay, cool.
Oh, nicely.
So I have a Blu-ray copy, courtesy of Twilight Time, of Mindwarp.
Mindwarp, that's
the
it.
First
It's a good one.
Fangoria produced. Well,
It's okay.
I don't know if I could.
It's palatable.
Good is a very
How
different.
about that?
Good is an interesting word to use. But so the first Fangoria produced movie was called Mindwarp from 1992. I remember when it came out. And for some reason, I threw it on last night. I must have never seen it because I was like, I'm sure I must have watched it. It was directed by a guy named Steve Barnett, who also directed Scanner Cop 2, aka Scanners the Showdown, aka Scanners 5. So he's okay in my book.
Okay, right.
But it's weird. It's like
You're the
this
scanner
weird,
apologist of the group.
of course. It's a weird post-apocalyptic kind of story that it almost has like this Matrix style thing to it, where the first 20 minutes are kind of tough because you're kind of set up with this girl. Her name is Judy, and she's introducing Marta Alicia. And I can tell you that I guarantee you that's her first film because she's awful. And that's what makes this first 20 minutes really hard to get through is the lead actress is like, holy smokes. But pretty much her and her mother are in this weird environment where they can plug in and pretty much live any sort of environment they ever want. Like her mother wants to be an opera singer, so she's in an opera kind of environment. It's a big star.
The holodeck from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Why do I remember? However, I remember it as Tron. I haven't seen it since 1992, but I remember it being Tron-like.
It's weird because it's early 90s, so it tries to go for that, but it's obviously low budget, so it doesn't exactly succeed. But the thing is, they can't leave, so it's like they don't interact with actual humans or anything. They're trapped in this little room, and that's all they have to do. And of course, this Judy character is very frustrated, and by defying them, she kind of gets cast out by whoever is in charge of all this into the post-apocalyptic world. Now, what happens is Bruce Campbell, who should be the lead, finds her. And that's kind of when the movie picks up. Because this is young Bruce Campbell at his peak. And
around Army of Darkness?
Army of Darkness, Darkman, that whole era in the early 90s where he looks his best, he's acting his best, he's just great. He's great in it. He's great. And once he came into the movie, I was kind of all of a sudden like, well, if they cut that 20 minutes out of the beginning, now I'm on board. If she just woke up in his little cottage or whatever. So it was really, really good. And then it just slows down to a halt. And Angus Scrimm comes in because he's kind of like the leader of this weird post-apocalyptic world. And I think it suffers just from a low budget. K&B did the effects, so there's a couple of really good gore bits. But it's kind of like, Bruce is in the movie, and then once he's kind of out, I lose all interest again.
Right.
And, you know, I think
he's in quite a few movies like that, like early on,
Yes.
where you're in it anytime he's on screen, and when he's not, you're like, eh.
Like, I haven't seen
The one he went to the moon with Chekhov.
Sure.
Whatever the fuck of that movie.
Well,
there's a movie where he goes to the moon with Chekhov.
There's one I've never watched that I'm going to watch now called Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat.
Right, yeah, I've heard of that one too. I never see that.
But that's the thing. It's like, you know, young Bruce from that period is better than any bad Bruce now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to watch whatever's from that period. But yeah, it's an all right movie. It's just, it's way too darn long. And then the ending is kind of infuriating. Okay. But I will say this, it was worth watching just because I like watching Bruce from that period. And Twilight Time, I like, bless them. I can't wait till we're going to have Nick Redmond from Twilight Time on in a couple of weeks.
So they put this out?
Yes. And bless them because it was, you know, I remember those Fango movies being, you know, VHS full screen movies. This thing was in widescreen and it looked gorgeous. It was beautiful. So, you know, kudos to them for giving Mindwarp an amazing Blu-ray release.
I'm really shocked that they'd put that out because they seem like quite a classy joint.
So in 2 weeks, we're going to ask why.
Why
Mindwarp?
The question will be answered.
Yes. So, yeah, that's it. Anyone else see anything before we...
Oh, no, but I just wanted to, just reminding you guys again, my birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks.
All right, and so our guest today, he is going to be coming up. And,
Rocky Horror. That is my reminder. My birthday.
Wait, I've got a better idea. Why don't we go to Reanimator the musical again?
Hey,
because we've seen it.
We're letting you take over the show for your birthday.
Yeah, but I'm still doing a show. It's not like, okay, guys, we're talking about musicals and I'm bringing on
you
my
get the
Aunt
tickets,
Tilly.
I'll show up.
See, that's it. I'm offering
I'll
to
shut
get
my
the
mouth.
damn
You
tickets.
pay for us for your birthday. Way to go, Elric.
Hey, when I was a kid, I took my mother out for Mother's Day to McDonald's and made her pay for us. We paid for her. She paid for us. You know, it's a deal. Anyway.
You're such a sweetheart, darling. Oh, my gosh. I'm just reminding you, Rocky Horror.
Yeah, Rocky Horror. Sure. Yeah,
Horror.
We'll get to that. Sure.
We're doing it.
No, all right.
Come on, guys.
Anyways, moving along.
It's going to happen.
So, you know, we've had producers or people that have produced films before. And we've gotten to hear a little bit about the process, but ever since we started the show, this is one producer in particular that I was really curious about having on, because when you look over his resume of some of the stuff that his name is attached to, which includes everything from Cheap Thrills to A Horrible Way to Die to The Aggression Scale to Big Ass Spider to Jodorowsky's Dune to the upcoming Starry Eyes, it's kind of like, wow, this is like all over the place. This is a nice, diverse bunch of movies that this person is helping put out into the world. So I would like to welcome Travis Stevens to the show.
Hello.
Hey, how do you like that intro?
That was amazing.
One consistency is you're on a roll. Like at least for my taste, because two of those films, and I've got my ticket for Starry Eyes, but two of those are in my top 10 right now this year. Like Cheap Thrills and Jodorowsky's Dune are two of the things I've enjoyed, and I just mean enjoyed. Like I went to them with Jodorowsky I had expectation because I'm a big fan of his work, but both of them just thrilled me and made me want to make movies more than I wanted to before I went to them. Which is not that common with movies.
And that's how Big Ass Spider was for me, where I afterwards I was like, that's what I want to do. That's my kind of movie. It was just seamless. It was
I mean, I like to think as genre fans in general, we like diverse stuff. Like we can watch Big Ass Spider, but then at the same time we want to, see Jodorowsky's Dune or whatever. So, I mean, like, where do we even begin here?
I think we're done. I think we just wanted to talk him up.
Right?
Well, one of the reasons that I was so excited we were having him on is whenever I find that I'm talking with people who aren't, in LA submerged in the industry, there's a lot of confusion over what a producer does. And even in LA submerged in the industry, there's a lot of confusion over what a producer does. So I was excited that we are having one of the best
let's
producers.
demystify the process.
Because I think some people think like, oh, that's the person that pays for the movie or whatever. Like that's the general. I mean, and sometimes a producer
finds
gets the
money. Some people do that.
But yeah, like from your perspective and your experiences, what do you do as a producer? No pressure.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good question. I think there's even on film sets, there's people who are confused by what a producer does. I know that for me, I think my job is to sort of help identify, refine, and execute whatever the director's vision for that movie is. And so that process starts, from the script all the way through the, production and the festival release and the marketing and what distributor we're going with and the social media campaigns. I mean, it never stops.
Are you usually there from the start?
Yeah.
On all
always,
the films you've worked on?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's for what you were saying is like, as genre fans, you know, you like things that are different. And just for me, you know, for me to get excited about something, I really need to have a hand in sort of shaping it and making it something that I find interesting.
Mm-hmm. And that's the commendable thing is like for all your productions, you're there pretty much on set every day. Whereas for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Whereas some producers are just like, they'll take their credit or whatever, you know.
I've seen the Cheap Thrills making of, and he was in every couple shots.
Yes.
So he was there when they lost power.
I'm going to try to do it less, but I think with a lot of, you know, I work with a lot of first-time and sort of up-and-coming directors, and it's good to just have somebody else there who might be thinking of the things that they're not, you know. But my eventual goal is to just never go to set and just have all the resources possible, and everybody's just doing their thing, and I can just stay home and watch TV.
What do you like about first-time and early filmmakers? Like, what do you like about helping them usher through? Obviously, Evan was unique. Evan Katz of Cheap Thrills is unique because he had been on the producer side of other films.
He'd been writing for a really long time.
So he knew all the different sides of filmmaking, but had never directed. And the making of, he really talks about like, this is the first shot I've ever directed, and it's a feature film. So how do you kind of get that confidence to work with people like that?
I think for me, it's just based on hanging out with people, and it's really just like I've never made a decision to make a movie based on really the project. It's more based on I like this person. I want to make some art with them. But I think a lot of the reason why the projects have been sort of up-and-coming directors is because up until this point, the budgets have been sort of small. And once somebody has some success, they're able to get sort of bigger budgets, and that's fantastic. But you know, when you don't have a track record to show, people aren't willing to give you as much money. So that's why it ends up being a lot of first-timers.
And how did you decide to get, you know, in this particular position? Because I know you have writing and directing credits yourself. So I mean, was it always kind of a given that you wanted to get into filmmaking in some capacity?
Yeah, I mean, even in college, like I had made, you know, my own films, and I think early on I sort of realized that I was better at sort of like collaborating with people and sort of, you know, certainly being creative and bringing ideas, but the actual execution and it wasn't as important to me, if that makes sense. It was more sort of like, let's talk about this. Like what I get most excited about are the conversations about what are we trying to say and what's the coolest way to do that or the most effective way to do that. So that's what I like. So yeah, I mean, since a very young age, you know, I was like, yeah, I want to make movies because this is my jam.
But the part most of us don't understand, especially if you're creative, and a lot of people go to film school not in LA, really come out here and really have no idea is the business side of filmmaking. And you, a period of your life was spent more in business, wasn't it? I moved out with the same sort of complete lack of understanding. So I moved out to LA in '96 with a degree that said filmmaking, and I seriously thought like, yeah, and then I go and I call these companies, and then I'll be making movies. Like, and there was an interview with my local newspaper on graduation day from college when we left, where I literally said that. And then 10 years later, you know, I hadn't done anything because you think like, oh, I know how to make a movie, or I want to make a movie, right.
And you think that's good enough, and that how a movie actually gets made and the sort of economics of it is. It's not something that you can really learn in school, or at least in my experience, they haven't taught in school. So it took me, you know, many years of sort of being in the dark before somebody shined the light on something called foreign sales, which is the sort of business of putting financing together and selling movies to distributors, which is like the fundamentals.
Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you might think this is boring, but I actually think this stuff is really eye-opening, especially me and Becca have come across this a couple times recently where someone goes, oh, well, that person doesn't sell foreign, so you're not making that movie.
Yeah,
And it's really eye-opening to hear things that seem very small-minded, but could you just talk a little bit about how that is getting movies made.
Yeah, because we've talked a lot on the show about like, well, when I go to AFM every year, about what I see there and the trends, and Danny Trejo is in everything because he's selling well in blank country and things like that. So
well, also the evolution of that, because I feel like trying, like we've had people like Charlie Band on, and it's like if you're trying to sell a movie back in the mid '90s where there was a video market, then it's a different story than the way it's evolved in the last couple of years. So
yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
So everybody getting into the business should realize that it's just getting worse every day, at least financially. But creatively, no. But I mean,
keep it real. I want to keep it real.
All you inspired filmmakers just give up.
Yeah, we don't need the competition
here.
Yeah, no, but the reality is unless you know somebody rich who's going to give you money, if you need to sort of design your project to be commercially viable, the first thing you need to understand is, what does the marketplace want, and what are they willing to pay for that? So there's a thing called film markets, and there's a few a year, and they happen, spread out throughout the year. And just like any sort of industry's market, it's producers and buyers sort of meeting together to look at each other's products. So like the American film market that you mentioned is there's this whole thing called sales agents, who are basically at these markets presenting films to buyers. And if you can get meetings with sales agents, they'll be able to tell you, horror movies are really selling right now. They're really hot. And here's the type of cast you need, and here's the budget level you should make it for. So rather than...
What is that budget level? I'm just curious about what they would say in their mind.
I think
$500,000 or under?
I would say under.
Yeah, definitely. And well, I mean, it's tough because so many people are making movies for the under $500,000 that the market, especially for horror, has gotten flooded. So you used to be able to pretty consistently make a movie between $250,000 and $500,000 and know that you were going to at least make $500,000 back. So if you made it for $250,000, hey, that's a pretty good return for your investors. Nobody's going to get rich, but people are going to make a little bit of money. Now it keeps shrinking and shrinking. So now if you're making it for $250,000 to $500,000, you might only be making $350,000 back.
And then the casting being assured is like banking on that. Oh well, we made it for $500,000, we don't get as much back, but because we have that cast, we'll probably be okay. If you're making it without that cast, it's floating in limbo.
Yeah, so I mean, especially right now in 2014, I do think there's it might be smarter to try to make the movie for over $1 million, but put whatever half your money in towards
Nicolas Cage.
Basically,
yeah, who makes a movie every few months because of that, probably because he still sells foreign, right?
Yeah, and it's the type of thing that it's not even just for the distributors. The fact is these movies get released, and a lot of them just don't spark to the sort of consumers who are outside the sort of hardcore niche thing. So, you can have actors who have been in great horror films, and a number of them, and we all know them. And the average person buying movies at Walmart, which accounts for whatever it is, 60-70% of all DVD sales, they don't know them, So it doesn't matter to them. But if you had the one person that they did recognize, then you'd probably sell more units.
Does Tariq sell at Walmart? Sorry, those who don't know Tariq, Mr. Tywin. It is weird, but I mean, who's on that list? Like saying Cheap Thrills, that cast to me, every single one of them is recognizable to me as a indie film goer.
But I don't know. Is
But
Pat Healy recognizable?
No, I don't imagine he's like a foreign sales
industry
guy, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and that's an interesting point, because the movie's really good.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I don't know, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but from what I understand, it didn't exactly, despite all the acclaim, it didn't necessarily do as well or get out there as much as it could have.
That is a movie that will have a long, long life, and people will discover it, and its success will happen over time. But if you're talking about that real thing where you put it on VOD and 4 million people watch it, that's not the level of cast that you need, and especially for a horror film to break through like that, you need either that level of cast, John Cusack, those typical people, or you need a concept that is so commercial and outrageous that everybody feels they have to see it. So you look at like the Human Centipede, and the reason why that movie did so incredible beyond the merits of the film itself was because it was the type of concept that all these, 12, 14-year-old girls could be like, oh my God, the grossest movie. I saw it last night. We have to watch it.
It came out the same time as Two Girls, One Cup. Yeah. It's this fecal matter obsession with young girls.
Yeah. Who put that out? Was that IFC that did?
Yeah.
And because I remember, again, like at the time I worked at Amoeba, so I could physically see people coming in and what they buy. And like, not for nothing, but Human Centipede, the list price on that thing was at least like $24.99 for the DVD
serious?
for a really long time. And yet people would come in every single day and be like, oh my God, this movie, I've heard about it. We're going to spend $25 right now on it. And I just like when you see it in that context, working at a video store, you're like, I can't believe it. You could buy 3 amazing movies for that much money. But you're going for that one because that's the one you've heard about. That's the one that's got the weird, fucked up gimmick.
And it broke out of the sort of the horror.
And the idea is so out there. I can kind of see that. You know what you just said, which was interesting, mentioning Cusack or Nicolas Cage. What's interesting is, so on the one hand, these are the actors who are now bankable. I also think they're all doing the worst work of their life because of, like, I wonder if it's hand in hand, the kind of projects they're getting bankrolled to do. These people are putting all their money into getting them in a movie, which actually hasn't got much of a budget for the rest of the film. And so the quality on both levels is suffering, which is just so bizarre to me.
So I think the like you're totally right. And what your job as the filmmaker is to understand the economics and then engineer your project to work for the economics, but not suffer the same creative issues. So we had a movie, a sci-fi sort of run and chase movie that we were trying to set up and with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And the Jean-Claude Van Damme component was because it made sense for the money. And we tried to redesign the script to fit him creatively. And at the end of the process, looked at the numbers and were like, it's not worth doing because you're going to end up with so little money to make the movie that when the audience watches the movie, they're going to be like,
it's another shitty Van Damme.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like,
which is like pointless.
Yeah. And you just have to be, you have to care enough to say no,
Right.
But I mean, as far as like, I think we were saying John Travolta and John Cusack. There's cooler actors than that will work at this level. Like Elizabeth Olsen with Silent House. It's like you can find people that are not going to cost you millions, but will actually make the movie pop and give a distributor confidence that this is something worth paying more for.
Which of your films have surprised you in terms of how they've done financially? Like not necessarily critically, because most of the stuff's pretty on the high end critically.
Well, I think I've made the most money of my career off the movie that critically is probably going to do the worst. But we made a movie, American Muscle, that comes out September 30th, and we made it for very, very little money, and it just was so commercial on the sort of outside that it's done very well for us.
Oh, it's already come out?
It comes out in 2 weeks.
Oh.
Or a week and a half.
So when you say it's done well for you, what does that mean?
So part of
Pre-sales?
what we were saying earlier is these sales agents, they take the projects to the market and sell them to the distributors around the world, a lot of times based on a trailer or based on a piece of artwork or the movie if it's finished. And in this particular case, we had a trailer that just really sold a world people liked and had a lot of style and had a lot of uniqueness, but also had those sort of very commercial components, which in this case is a guy kicking other people in the face and sexy girls and a muscle car.
I like a good revenge film. Isn't it got the star of...
Nick Principe's in it, right?
Isn't he the guy who plays
Nick's in it.
the slasher and...
Yeah,
Nick.
Land Arrest.
Yeah.
Chrome Skull.
And he was in some Sons of Anarchy, right? He looks like he's from Sons of Anarchy.
He should be.
He looks born from that world.
He's in a different movie every week.
Okay.
It's hard to keep up. But with that one, to get back to sort of like, what my process is I had some partners who came to me who said, hey, let's do a no budget grindhouse movie. And it's like, okay. So my whole thing about that is, okay, if I'm going to do this, what is going to make it creatively interesting? So what we decided to do was to make the first art house grindhouse movie.
Cool.
So it's like the script reads completely grindhouse, but our approach to making it was completely art house. So when you see the movie, the sort of cinematography, the editing, the sound design, like all of those components, are borrowing more from the art house world. So it's this
Jack Hill was a little bit like that. If you go back and see some of it, like Switchblade Sister and coffee and all that. They were very artistically done, but on paper, it's trash.
I was
And
thinking,
he's just a really good director, and he
his
elevated the material.
Koji Watts, I can never say his last name. The guy who did Go-Go Second Time Virgin.
Yeah.
His
He's like that too,
scripts are very just exploitive rape revenge films, but it's shot like Godard.
It's beautiful. No, and I think there's something to that. That's an interesting approach.
Yeah. And I mean, to give everybody credit, like the screenwriter understood that was our goal and sort of worked that in, and the fellow producers and the actors. So it wasn't like there was a bunch of people who were trying to make something shitty, and then we came in and tried to make something good. I mean, from the ground up, we said, hey, this would be an interesting approach rather than just doing a fake Grindhouse movie and adding fake scratches and like trying to make a bad movie on purpose. It's like, what if we take those elements that we love about Grindhouse movies, like Switchblade Sisters and I watched all the sort of biker movies from that era and just sort of put it into something that was the contemporary version of a Grindhouse movie, which is another thing that I don't think people do. I think people...
They put a filter on it.
Yeah. And it's like...
Let's downgrade our footage.
Like Michael Bean's The Victim. It's just shot like however you shot on a DV, and then you put a filter on it, and now you call it Grindhouse. I mean, for what it's worth. I don't think Michael listens. I think I'm safe. He was my neighbor though for a while. I want to go back to a Horrible Way to Die, and then there's one that you made with Adam that's never come out, right? The one with the rapes in a small town.
Having.
Yeah, 4 stories about date rape.
And
which I may have seen.
Oh, you might have seen that.
Chunk of it, maybe.
Yeah.
Why was that?
I liked it actually.
I mean, I assume that the title's kind of a hard sell, but
the distributors don't understand how commercial that title actually is. So we'll see. I mean, it was for Adam, the whole exercise was a warm up because it'd been a while since he made a feature, and he just sort of wanted to get back into the groove and made one and then made another and then was like, hey, we could actually make this a little thing. So, I think it's one of those things that when you see it, it's really interesting and cool.
Yeah, reading about it caught my interest.
I got to say, I mean, the one story I think I'm allowed to tell is for that one, what fun we were having. You'd already shot maybe one of the segments or something? Okay. So what happened was when I don't know if it was you or Adam were talking to AJ about doing A Horrible Way to Die, I don't know if he was familiar with Adam Wingard, but they sent him the opening segment. And I distinctly remember me going over and him showing it to me. Within 5 minutes, he's like, I have to work with this guy. Yeah. Because there was just something about it as a director, like the opening scene, the way it was shot and put together. They shot the one segment. And then I think AJ's like, yeah, I'll do this movie and whatever else you got. Yeah. So he shot a segment for that movie and then A Horrible Way to Die.
I would have said that after Pop Skull. I mean, I remember when people were like passing around Pop Skull going, oh my God, you won't believe this. Like this movie's made for nothing. What is it? And I still can't really classify what it is or what works about it, but it's just different than other things being made.
Yeah, it's just him. Yeah, I mean, it's just
different.
Pure artistic expression. And that's the fucking great thing about him.
And how did you hook up with Adam? Did you see Pop Skull or just...
Yeah, when Pop Skull was looking for distribution, Brad from Bloody Disgusting was like, hey, I got this screener, you should look at it. Mm-hmm. So I looked at it and fell in love with it, did everything I could to help it and met with Evan and Adam. And we were doing these sort of, movie nights at the house where different filmmakers and journalists and film festival people were coming over, and we'd each bring, whatever the newest screener we got from Spain or wherever. And Evan was a part of that, and Adam, when he was in town, would come, and so I just became friends with him. And when A Horrible Way to Die came up, I was like, please, whatever you want to do. So.
Yeah, a lot of people don't talk enough about A Horrible Way to Die, and I love that movie. I know maybe I'm slightly biased, but I really think it's
a good example of elevating. I don't want to say the material's bad, but elevating a slasher film because of performance.
Yeah,
AJ and Amy both have really great characters and great performances.
Yeah, and it takes itself seriously, and I think I think to Adam and Simon's credit, they really spent a lot of time trying to do something unique.
And the German DVD cover is glorious. For those who don't know, and the reason I bring this up because it is going to lead into there's a viewer question about whether you produce whether your control within the marketing and distribution.
German,
but it basically, I just remember when AJ first posted it, and it had him standing on a bunch of corpses holding an axe of woman, all these bloodied woman corpses.
I think he's in the snow or something.
But in the movie, you see he only strangles a couple people and never has any kind of real weapon. very strange. But, in terms of marketing, on the films you've made, have you ever had to do things that you felt like, oh my God, what the fuck are they making us do?
Yeah, did they
just to
pick
sell this
your
movie?
cover for you so that it could run in Redbox and things like that?
I mean, you don't have the control, and especially at the smaller budgets, the distributor's like, look, it's hard enough out there selling movies. And yes, the cool Mondo poster is cool for a certain percentage of people, but I need to sell this to, Joe and Bob. I don't know. I just invented a gay couple in the Midwest. They shop at Walmart.
They're a really niche demographic.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it's the type of thing. And you sit there and you go into it knowing that, and you do everything you can to create marketing materials that will work for them, that still honor your film. Right. So we do a lot of that work ourselves, both with the trailers and the artwork campaigns, so that they don't need to go off and do it themselves. But at the end of the day, they, in the contracts, they have the right to do whatever they want. And, we're not talking about, Ridley Scott here or James Cameron. It's like we're people with not much clout, and we're lucky that they're buying the movie at all.
Right. Of your films, which one is the most different from probably how it would have been in the original artwork?
I think all of the Japanese artwork is just atrocious and misleading, and you just are like, Jesus.
Now I have to Google the Japanese artwork.
For all, just in general.
I loved I don't know if I assumed Draft House had a hand in the campaign for Cheap Thrills, but I really loved, the pink. There's something just about the coloring and the character. It really gave, because one of my things is I try not to. I haven't seen the trailer for Starry Eyes or The Guest, and I do my best now to avoid, especially the films I'm excited by. I avoid everything I can, and then I'll see them, and it'll be.
I can't help it. I have to watch trailers.
I mean, everyone's been talking about the trailer of The Guest, and I see the Starry Eyes poster, and the Starry Eyes poster. I would watch any movie with that poster. Yeah. It could have been called dog shit. This is the poster. I'm like, I'm at that movie.
I think for Starry Eyes, the reason I'm excited, is there a trailer out for it? I don't know if I watched it or not.
Just the teaser.
The teaser. I think I read a review of it, which got me interested in me, but then somebody posted a snippet of the score. And I'm a big score guy. Right. So as soon as I heard a little bit of the music, I'm like, I'm in. Whatever this is, I want to see it. So
but I think it seems like I do have to think a little outside the box now, because otherwise you'll just get lumped into this whole red box woman being dragged down the tunnel,
dragged away from
which
the
is
tunnel.
the stock art that they use.
And it doesn't work.
That was the stock art 2 years ago. They're switching it up now. They've been doing a lot of close-up on eyeballs. And there was a trend about 3 years ago where it was a redheaded girl naked huddled in a corner. And it was like on 6 different movies.
I want that to come back. I'm a big fan of that one.
But I mean, the thing is and the thing that's so frustrating is the filmmaker, without realizing it, is paying for that crappy art. Because what the distributor or the sales agent is doing is they're hiring a firm for X amount of dollars, $2,500 for 4 comps, $5,000 for 8, or whatever, $10,000 for 16 comps. And what those design firms are doing is they're going to the stock photos and they're just putting it. And that's why there's so many, campaigns with the same piece of art, because it's distribution companies that don't give a shit.
Or they'll discover that it sells well for one title, and therefore they'll kind of just tweak it and reverse it and change it to blue instead of red.
And that's one of the big cardinal sins of that a lot of us film people who move out to make films don't understand, that if you get a distribution deal and you're like, yes, I got a distribution, think you're going to ever see $1, then they do this thing where about the marketing costs and the advertising costs.
That just infuriates me.
Could you tell people a little bit about that, about how they, and there's no accountability, right? Usually.
Well, there's accounting.
Yeah. But how does it work?
It doesn't make sense.
I make my indie film, I come out here, I sell it, somebody gives me a shitty deal, and it says after marketing costs.
And then points after marketing costs. How would that work?
So, like the record business, the distributor is advancing you an amount of money, and based against projected sales of your film. And then every expense that they can expense on top of that advance, they will take it from your sales. So everything from the shipping to get the DVDs to the store, the manufacturing of the DVDs, any sort of breakage that happens to the DVDs, the marketing costs of the artwork, the trailer, the publicist that sent out the one-page press release to the same 40 people they do every time, that gets paid $5,000 that your film pays for. All of this crap sits on top of you ever seeing a dime. And the only way to, I just realized I actually am supposed to be friends with distributors. So the distributors on their end, there are legitimate costs.
Of course,
So
don't worry, they don't listen to the show.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only filmmakers.
No, but so what you have to do is just talk to somebody who's been through it before.
Yeah.
Because what you can do is if you have the leverage and they really want your movie, you can try to put a cap on the expenses so that, like there are movies that we've done that we got our first accounting and they have grossed $1.5 million. And these are small budget movies. And we're like, holy smokes, that's amazing. And we didn't see an additional dime because there was 1.2 million of expenses.
According to their accountant. Now,
exactly. Now, if you want, you can audit them.
Which is frowned upon from what I understand.
Well, it's just like in any sort of business deal. If you feel like you're being taken advantage of, you have to nut up. And that's going to cost you money, or you take it, But I think you can, when doing your deals, like especially when you're starting out, you're so excited that somebody likes your movie enough to put it out, and it's going to be in Redbox, it's going to be on Netflix, people are going to be able to see my work. Like that is so exciting to you that the economics of it, are secondary. So you should go into it knowing, hey, somebody's not maliciously, but just the nature of the business. And because it's such a tough business to make money in right now, somebody, when you're doing a deal with them, is trying to screw you.
And this again feels like, when we're talking about the mystification of the producer, it feels like this is another role of the producer where the director probably should just be thinking about the audience and probably just should be focused on, I just want to get my movie out there. But that's when you can really be a protective blanket or shield for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough though, because I think now there is sort of an overlap in all these roles that people play, and I think it's good for everybody to go into the production with as much understanding of what this world is actually like, so that there's not confusion when that report comes in, because like if the filmmaker's spending a year of their life making this, and in their mind they think, success is X, and it's not anywhere near what these movies typically do, then they're going to be disappointed, and that's going to hurt your relationship with them. And so it's better just to be open. We all go through it together. And
I think it was your biggest. Oh, sorry.
I had a two-part question. Well, the first, and this is just from my own limited experience because I've only done one doc and managed to get it out there. But I feel from the people I've spoken to, it seems that your best bet is the only money that you're going to see for your film, your hard work, is primarily in the upfront.
The MG.
The whatever you get paid up front for it. And then after that, their accountants will somehow figure out a way to never pay you again. Is that somewhat accurate?
I would say as a business model, you should go into it thinking profitable is if we sell it up front for more than we made it.
Right.
Meaning do not count on any sort of revenue coming in after the movie.
Your advance is essentially what you're going to make off the movie.
So like we were talking with sales agents before, find out what the market value of that type of film is with that level of cast, and then make it for less. And probably make it for even more than less than you would, because by the time it goes to the market's probably gotten even worse. And I would not say it's necessarily because distributors are screwing the filmmakers and keeping the money. I sincerely believe it is really difficult out there for independent, especially genre films, because they just don't have the scope of cast and scope of movie to really stand out when there's all of this other entertainment options out there for Joe and Bob.
And the second part of my question is, I think I might have read this article based on something that you actually tweeted, is how difficult is it to kind of keep track of the VOD side of things? Because that's still a new evolving way for people to watch movies. But I mean, people are, I watched Almost Human. I went on iTunes or whatever it was, Amazon.
I'm always looking for that, especially
it's kind of the easiest way.
I posted an article on that too, where it was talking about how there's no accountability in VOD yet, because Amazon doesn't exactly report numbers or anything like that.
It's just, I mean, there's accounting for it, so you get the number of transactions. But the issue with it is that each sort of service has different accounting, and there's no sort of consistent performance. Like with home video, it used to be, and the reason why it was better back when Charlie, that was running the empire, was you knew how many Blockbuster video stores there were on the U.S.
Right.
You knew how many mom and pop stores, and you knew the average number of units they bought. So you could sort of do a projection for, hey, if I make the movie for this, here's how many units I'm going to sell. Here's how much revenue that's going to bring in. With VOD, you can have two movies with the exact same qualities, exact same quality film, exact same quality cast, everything exactly the same, and one does twice the business as the other. And on VOD, it can be as low as 400 transactions. Like we saw a report where a movie, 400 people rented it, and it was in 40 million homes.
Wow.
And so there's no baseline, So that's what makes it hard when people say the accounting is difficult. It's because you can't sort of do projections.
And it's funny, it's not like you could advertise on VOD the way that,
it's a good idea. Maybe that will start advertising before your other movie,
Well, we've had that discussion with Netflix, is like, if you are just know nothing about the genre, I know I've had this discussion with BJ Colangio. If you know nothing about the genre and you're just like, I want to watch a horror movie tonight, and you go on to Netflix, what becomes your driving choice? Is it who's in it? Is it, when I was a kid, it was always box art, but is box art still important? Is it ratings? Because I pay attention to the ratings a lot now on films.
I'm sure there's no definitive answer. Young people will be, everyone different. I think it's going to be very difficult to know. What I'm curious about is what is the Netflix deal? Because Blue Ruin, arguably maybe the best film of the year, we're definitely in the top couple films of the year, is already on there straight away. It jumps there. Before it was on VOD for a while, but it jumped there pretty early.
Contracted was there really quickly.
Contracted, yeah. So is that a pretty good deal for these films that once they...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the distributor did the deal with Netflix or if the producers withheld that right. But I think with a lot of the sort of ISC and Magnolia and even probably Radius a little bit, their whole thing is we're going to hype it up with the theatrical, and then we're going to put it on as many services as possible, as quickly as possible, and get as much money as we can from that right off the bat.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, I talked with this just yesterday with Evan from Cheap Thrills, because Cheap Thrills is not on Netflix, and there's this sort of anxiety you get as a filmmaker, but not everybody can see it. But then on the other hand, financially, having your movie out there so quickly, where you're not making money per person watching it, it's like.
Yeah, because as soon as a film hits Netflix Instant, no one buys it anywhere else.
Yeah,
I mean, not really. I mean, I feel the same way. If I could see it there, it's like I don't really.
Yeah, that's it.
But then if the quality of the movie, like Blue Ruin, if I get a good deal on the Blu-ray, I'm gonna buy it, because even though I saw it that way, I want to watch the commentary and the making of features, and I'm one of those
purist.
people.
I don't think most folks are like that.
Yeah, I know most people aren't like that anymore, but
it's weird. I mean, I don't know what your purchasing history is like, but for me, it's like I'm only buying the movies that I've liked for 20 years.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't buy new films that have come out. If so, something like, Monster Squad does a giant re-release, I'll pick that up. Yeah. But I don't go to buy the actual Blu-ray. Yeah. But if Blue Ruin's out, I rent it off Amazon.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on how good the actual movie is, But at the same time, so for the most part, the projects that you pick or that you associate yourself with, for example, like Cheap Thrills, it's more for you. It's more of a reward knowing that that's going to be a long-lasting movie. You know what I mean? Who cares if it did well or didn't do well? But the fact is, in 10 years, people are still going to be talking about it because it's the sort of thing people are going to keep rediscovering.
Yeah, I mean, with any of these movies, I'm doing it because I like making art.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I'm not I'm not doing it to get rich. So with Cheap Thrills, what was awesome is hey, we're making this movie that has something to say, and I firmly believe in this really black, cynical message, and that's the value. Really, that's the value, and making a movie with one of my best friends.
That's cool. And what about something like Jodorowsky's Dune. I mean, I remember I was harassing you from the moment I first saw anything from it because I was just so fascinated that you were all of a sudden doing a documentary. But not only that, but like I'm just like a nerd for like, you know, making of and what if projects and all that. And I finally saw it with an audience. I'm so glad I saw it on the big screen that way because, I mean, people reacting to some of the shit that Jodorowsky says is just amazing. But how did you get involved in that? Was that something that you were there from the beginning? Or did that filmmaker already start it and kind of bring you on board?
So I had been friends with the director and the other producer for, I don't know, 20 years, close to 20 years. And they did a movie, New York Hardcore, that, you know, I really enjoyed.
Oh, right. And you're a big music guy as well.
Yeah, exactly. So they basically came to me and said, hey, we want to make this doc. And Jodorowsky just agreed to do the doc. So, you know, would you want to get involved and produce it? And for me, it's like being a huge fan of Jodo, I was like, yes, this is awesome. Like a chance to, you know, in some ways, it's making a Jodorowsky film. Like, Can you imagine?
So they didn't start yet. They just contacted him. Okay.
But the other producer had done, I think, something like 7 years of research.
Is that Steven?
Yeah.
Steve,
yeah. So
Jump Cut regular.
Yeah, exactly. You should have him on because he is like just like a private investigator
of lost films. He loves lost films or things that have kind of fallen through the cracks.
He digs, and there wasn't a lot on the internet, so he was going to the library and looking up old Starlog magazines and old varieties and stuff, like really doing like real research on this. So he had done a ton of work, and then, you know, it was really just sort of about, you know, for me on that, it was just sort of helping sort of define the story, helping bring in the types of interviews that could sort of provide some context to the story, because Jodo is obviously the most charismatic, you know, one of the most charismatic people ever, and that's fantastic, and he'll get you through the movie. But sort of for people, you know, what are the sort of, you know, facts that they need, the historical facts, and sort of what's the context for that. And so yeah, it was a 4-year process, and we worked really, really hard, and it's awesome that the movie's out there and a big success for everyone. And you know, it's cool to hear people be like, yeah, it inspired me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was awesome. One of the most inspiring films.
Was there any type of battle between what the actual story was and what Jodorowsky wanted to present in it? Or was it all just straight?
No, and I think, you know, the director is a real sort of diplomat, and I think Jodo trusted him, and I think, you know, we have good intentions. And so there was never, you know, we weren't looking to exploit anything or create drama where there wasn't. It was just sort of to do our best version of sort of presenting what this could have been.
And it's incredible when these stories and some of the things that are almost like wowie mystery moments, you know, learning some of the stuff, how Alien comes together from the same two, going, wow, the ripples of this film are actually this film that doesn't exist. Affect all the films we love. You know, they really do. I mean, especially with O'Bannon and Giger and things like that, some of the team. But he is just also personally such. I was also wondering, Santa Sangre wasn't ever in the film. Was that a rights issue? That was the one film of his, which I love that film, but I was surprised that it wasn't, or if it was just maybe not used because it was a later film.
Yeah.
Like it was after when Dune would have been. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't remember.
Can't remember. Yeah, that's interesting.
But
probably it is.
I mean, it's funny that you say, I mean, yeah, that's a component of Dune, that, hey, these people got together and they sort of seeded these other things. But I think that's filmmaking in general. Like, you know, we had a meeting with an actor today who had read a script for a thing that we're going into production on, and whether or not he does the movie, he had a comment that sticks in your head, and then do you take that moving forward into, you know what I mean? So it's like this like filmmaking is a thing. It's an art form where you do a lot of communicating, and you creatively vibe with people, and that really does, you know, whatever sort of Venn diagram there is of all of these sort of relationships that lead to other films. I mean, it's fascinating to me, because you look like the awful title Mumblegore. When you look at the collaborations between, you know, Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett and Joe Swanberg, and sort of how all of that overlaps. That's like one example of it, where it's really just based on just people, you know, having conversations about film and vibing and.
I mean, that's some of my favorite stories, is hearing how certain projects or people got together over other things that never happened. You know, I think that's one of the fascinating things about Jodorowsky's Dune.
Well, I think the moment where he's like, he's walking down the street, he goes to see Dark Star.
Oh, that's
and he's not even talking about the makers, he's talking about the effects. And he's like, that's the one. And you're like, really? Like of Dark Star? But he saw something that, you know, leads to a whole, and without that, there's no Return of the Living Dead. It's possible Dan O'Bannon would have fallen through the crack. You know, we don't know. But you're right. There's a transference almost between people when they work together. Like you're getting something from someone else, and it's pretty fascinating. Did you actually ever sit down with Jodo? Did you?
The budget was so small.
You couldn't go out there.
They were basically, we could only afford a car that had 4 people.
Yeah.
You know, so that was the director, the cameraman, the sound guy, and Steve. You know, he'd never left the country, and I was like, you should go and have this adventure.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And also based on him, I mean, he's still until really recently been obscure. And so you probably wouldn't have any idea that it's going to connect the way it does.
I did.
know? You did, yeah.
Yeah, because I had been to screenings at the New Beverly,
Right.
and I knew this younger generation was discovering them, and you know, that's part of your thing as a producer, is to sort of, you know, have at least an idea of sort of what the temperature is out there for stuff. And I knew, like, on that particular project, it was like, okay, we have the old school Jodo fans, we have the filmmaker documentary fans, we have the fans of Dune, we have the sci-fi just general fans, and then we've got this new generation that's discovering Jodorowsky. And it was like, yeah, we're hitting all of these boxes that, you know, it made total sense to do, you know.
Did you ever hear those stories? I just remember when I discovered him, he was still bootleg, because I guess the producer of the Beatles, Alan Klein, was still not letting his work get out there. Yeah. And then eventually they made up or something. His stories are always so bizarre. It's like, we ran into each other outside a food place, we hugged each other. You're a beautiful man, you know.
Yep. I don't know enough. I just know that there always seems to be, you know, life or death drama.
Right. Which is, well, I love the part where he says, you know, you have to have ambition in life. You have to, I know I won't be 300, but I want to be 300. And that's enough. That kind of, you know, you walk out a little higher than you were before. Yeah. And that must have done fairly well, right? And for a documentary, it must have.
I mean, it's, you know, we'll see where it ends up worldwide. Everything's complicated. But yeah, I mean, that was my big takeaway from that, which is a movie can be whatever you want it to be. The only thing limiting it is your imagination. Right. And I think so often, especially with horror films and the low budget stuff, we're just approaching it so straightforward. And it's like, just stop.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to do the small budget version of a big budget movie. Like, why don't you have some fun? Why don't you spend time thinking, well, how can I do this differently? How can I make this something that nobody else has ever seen before? And I think that, you know, when he said that, that was like just a slap in my face. It's like, yeah, I really need to push harder to do things differently.
And that must be cool working on films you're working on that are then leaving you inspired to the next thing and shifting your. Because I wanted to ask a little bit about LA, because watching the making of Cheap Thrills, which what's the name of that?
Vital Heat
by
TJ Nordic.
Yeah, exactly. Which is great. It's like 39 minutes on YouTube, or all sorts of places.
Actually, on the disc.
On the disc, but a lot of
you should buy the
a lot of places. Just go straight to YouTube. Screw the film right now. But I just watched it before the show, and it was a really great, a very honest account of making the film. But I wanted to ask about LA, because also Starry Eyes is obviously a Los Angeles story. I haven't seen it yet. What are some of the difficulties of shooting in LA? Obviously, you live here, so there's some nice things about comforts of being at home, but what are some of the harder things about LA? Obviously, LA has not been making it easier on filmmakers with tax and stuff, and making us go to New Orleans. But for you, what are some of the differences here than other places you've been?
I mean, it all sort of balances out. You know, the difficulties is everything's more expensive because there's so many productions and people are so burnt out that to get locations and those things that you can sort of get for free because people are so excited about a movie. Like, that doesn't exist here. Nobody's excited about a movie. It's a hassle. It's a pain in the ass. So permits and all that. You can't guerrilla it as much. So that ends up costing more. But if you go and you shoot in New York or some of these other places, or, you know, whatever, Missouri, where we did A Horrible Way to Die, well, you got flights and lodging and stuff. So in my opinion, it all sort of balances out. So it's really sort of what's right for that movie. And like both Cheap Thrills and Starry Eyes are sort of part of, in my mind, this sort of LA, series of films that we'll do. And they had to be done here, and we're shooting one in a week that we're shooting here but isn't set here, and same difficulties. It's like trying to find locations.
But for indie stuff, the tax incentive stuff doesn't really affect you if you're low budget, right? You have to be above a certain.
I've never even tried
for
in the state of
incentives and
California. Yeah, because the studios just absorb them all up. In other states, it's easy. No matter what the size of your production, you submit your paperwork and you get your whatever your 20%, 25%, 30% back.
And the other thing on the documentary I took away from it was like in the last days, when everyone else wants to quit. What is it as a producer that you have to dig into to just keep everything on track, to get to the finish, knowing that this is maybe only needs like 2 more days, but everyone else is done. Yeah. And I've seen that on almost any time set I've been on in the last few days. I've seen people are expiring. Yeah.
I mean, I think your job as a good producer is to prevent that from happening. Which is just about sort of hiring the right people that really vibe together, giving them the resources to get their job done so that they're not getting totally like stretched too thin. Because your whole job is to create a positive bubble where people can be creative and something magical can happen. But when it does get towards the end, it's just really going into that with whatever, the stupid ice cream sandwiches or popsicles or just little gestures that let people know like, hey, you busting your ass is appreciated. And you sort of doing everything you can to make this special, like we see it and we love it and we love you and thank you. And then, just drinking a lot.
A lot of drinking. Yeah.
Ice cream goes a long way, though.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like a nice ice cream sandwich?
I've never been on a film set where somebody brought me ice cream. That would definitely make my day.
I heard a good Iguana, the Monty Ellman story. One story he told me that he said it was the worst production of his life, and the producers in Italy were just the worst, and they were on an island, kind of like the Galapagos Island, and they had to wait like 6 weeks for the lights. So they were shooting without the lights showing up, and he said he'll never forget the one day they were waiting for the lights patiently, and one day they all went down for ice cream, and the producer made all of the cast pay for themselves, and Monty went home to the hotel and said, "I'm not coming back until the lights are there." Like that one moment for him was like, you know what? No, I'm done. And then he just sat in the hotel, and then the lights showed up, and they went back to work. Just interesting to hear that. If you're going to be a tight ass about something little like ice cream sandwich, maybe we're going to be a little less forgiving when you screw us on the bigger things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous when I hear these stories. Like, I think there are producers out there who don't give a shit about the movie, about the people, about the process, about any of it. They're doing it for whatever reasons they are, and you're not going to be able to do it for very long if that's your approach.
I have a couple of questions from people. Jonathan Hughes, who went to Starry Eyes I think there's lots of photos of him at Film for Fright Fest. He met Dennis Widmeyer and Kevin Kolsch, is it? Yeah. He asked how the three of you met and decided to collaborate.
On Twitter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So this is, again, a future story about how this can happen.
No, this is how it works.
It's like online dating, but with filmmaking.
Yeah, so I had followed Dennis's Twitter account, and he was looking for people to watch the UFC fight with, and I said, hey, we're at Big Wang's with Evan Katz and his brother Peter Katz. You come on down. So Dennis came down, and we probably spent a year watching fights, once a month together, and then he was like, hey, I'm a filmmaker. And I was like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, I got this project. You want to look at it? And it's going to be a little Kickstarter movie. And I was like, I've never done Kickstarter before. That seems interesting. And then it just sort of, blossomed from there.
So wait, did you guys kickstart Starry Eyes?
Initially. So what it ended up, initially it was going to be this small $50,000 movie. And then once we did the Kickstarter, everybody really responded to it, and the press really sort of championed it, and it got all this traction. And then all of a sudden, distributors and money people started saying, well, what's this project? And I was like, oh, well, it's this small little thing we were going to do. You want to look at it? And they're like, please. And so then we kept on bringing on more and more partners, and then all of a sudden it became a healthy movie.
Nice.
Also, Jerry Smith from Icons of Fright, who was very excited that you're on, he asked, are there projects you've had to pass on that might have been artistically there, that you were interested artistic, but you just knew up front, this isn't going to connect or sell?
All of them.
but you went through anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. If I like the filmmaker, then I'll do everything I can to not pass on it. But I don't think there's been anything that, I mean, yeah. So it's like, if I like the filmmaker, then I consider my job to help them make it work.
Right.
So now what's happened is it's really gotten into just scheduling where there's filmmakers that I want to work with, and the project I think is great. But, we're like, I'll tell you, like my day right now is I'm in post-production on Ted Gagan's We're Still Here. We're shooting, and we start in a week on John Carcietta's Teenage Cocktail. We start prepping in November, a movie we're shooting in January in Ohio. And Starry Eyes is on its festival tour, comes out in November. American Muscle comes out September 30th. So there's just this sort of, time suck that scheduling these new ones doesn't work. But yeah, to answer his question, it's like, that's my job, is to, if there's a germ of something in there, then, it's my job to germinate it. That doesn't make sense. Water it.
No, but it seems from looking over the titles, I can tell that if you've been interested in the property or the people, you've obviously made it, because these movies are so different,
Yeah.
Adam Lima asked what the benchmark number for bankable success is. Obviously, how does it get easier to make the next one if you have some success? Have you had that yet, or is it always hard?
No, it definitely gets easier.
Okay.
That's the great thing. And you can look at any of the sort of Blue Ruin's a perfect example. So from Murder Party to Blue Ruin to where he's at now, if your movie is perceived as a success, so start small, that'll be a success if it makes money, and that gets you to that next ladder. Evan Katz had never directed a movie before. Cheap Thrills was perceived well, and that got him several steps up the ladder. So I think what it should be is set your budget based on the perceived market value, and I would just encourage the first one to be really, really low budget and really creative, so that it really pops and stands out and makes some money. I mean, you look at Almost Human, like that was a great success for them, and financially and exposure wise. And now when they're gearing up for their next one,
Did you see The Battery?
it's easier. I did.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I liked about we had him on Jeremy on the show, and what I liked about what he said is that he knew how much money he had. He's like, I got $8,000. I'm going to write a story that I know.
$6,000.
Yeah, $6,000. And he also said, if I had $200,000, the film would look exactly the same. And that was inspiring. That's the part where you go, all right, just make the movie you want to make,
Yeah.
but know what you've got.
Yeah, and you look at that movie and the sort of the car scene at the end, it's like that stands out. And
It's a choice, a really creative choice.
Yeah, and it fits the budget.
Yeah.
And that's your job as a filmmaker, is to come up with something creative.
Right. Yeah, an actual solution. There's a couple other, I think you've answered how you are drawing. Somebody asked, BJ Colangelo asked if you're drawing, what are the 3 things that draw you to project? Obviously, the personality of the director is the big one.
And
or the filmmaker, the writer.
Filmmaker, and more and more for me, it's, what is this movie trying to say? Like, sure, there'll be a thing like Big Ass Spider where it's like, okay, this is an exercise in being restricted to sort of commercial elements, but what can we do to creatively make it interesting? But really, more and more now, I'm just drawn to, what is this movie trying to say? Because that's the only thing you have on the lower budget is that people are really going to connect with and take away, because you're not going to have enough money to sort of compete with these huge movies. But you can have ideas, you can have soul, and so that's the second biggest thing. And then I think the other thing is, can I help that person make that? Like, can I make that movie better? Can I help them? Or am I just not the right fit?
Since you mentioned Big Ass Spider, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you got involved in that one, because, it seems different from the rest of your filmography. But at the same time, I know Mike very well, Mike Mendez, the director, and it seems like I would assume you're both on the same page where it's like, well, this is what we have. We can make this movie. How can we make it different and cool? And I know, like, obviously one of the biggest battles was that it was Mega Spider for the longest time. So even just getting it called the title Big Ass Spider was a challenge and a victory. But I mean, what was that? Was it just that, like, being in this box, being like, can we make like one of those sci-fi movie style things, but just better than what they do?
That's it. That was the creative challenge, and that was what was creatively fun about it. It's like, how do we do this and do a cool version of it? Because financially it makes sense to do it, and all these companies are doing it, but nobody gives a shit about the movie. And so that was every day, both on the script development and while shooting it. It's like, what can we do to sort of flip the script on this? You know, and it results in the casting and results in sort of some of the improv stuff that happens.
The humor is what saves,
that's what gets it through.
elevated that film for sure.
Yeah, and we went into it saying, you know, yeah, it needs to have this and this and this and kind of this type of structure to work for the people who buy these films. But what's Tremors? You know, what do we love about Starship Troopers? Like, what are the movies that actually did it right, and how do we sort of, you know, in Ghostbusters, you know, how do we infuse that into our film? And Mike's awesome, and you know, the other guys on it who you know, it's the Epic Pictures guys. I mean, they wanted to make something cool too, and you know, kudos for them for allowing that process and eventually understanding that Big Ass Spider was the best title for that film.
And unlike a director, you don't need to be pegged. It's unfortunate. Like even Mike, I know he is. You know, it can be frustrating because he did that well. So of course now he's doing another Spider film, and that might be frustrating. And if hopefully he'll knock that one out of the park too, and go on to other things. But for you as a producer, you it seems you have a little more choice over what you do on next, and you can be a little more diverse. Are you looking at that for bigger budgets? Or you're still interested in these stories that you have to really work to help bring to the screen?
Yeah, I mean the movies, you know, the next sort of phase, because up until, you know, I'm not rich. I had to sort of, you know, scrape this career together, and so at first it was sort of getting a track record, and now that phase 2 is sort of these bigger budgets. It's the same sort of thinking and approach to the material, but just with more resources. But yeah, for me, it's like being a record producer, and it's just like working with, you know, there can be bands in different genres, but if there's quality, then you're getting excited about it. So, you know, we're in production on a documentary about skateboarding in northern Mexico right now. You know, this teenage cocktail that we're doing is really kind of like a, you know, teen drama. I mean, it's, you know, it's just about what do you get excited about? And I'm sure for you too, you watch a wide variety of movies and listen to a wide variety of music and read different books, and you know, that's what keeps you creatively charged.
Yes, I was at the Something Weird tribute from Mike Vraney, and I was just telling these guys something that came up about what he just said is that a lot of those guys who ended up saving a lot of movies and being distributors were managers of bands before that, in the period before, almost all of them. Mike Vraney was the manager of the Dead Kennedys.
Oh, really?
So there was all these stories about all these people, and you're like, oh. And so he said it just seems to be that was the interest. These kind of obsessive, once punk was gone, they were obsessed by these weird movies.
I trust
just an interesting connection.
I understand it all too
right,
well.
yeah, exactly.
I go back and forth between my music love and movie love.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. You know, it keeps you energized.
Yeah.
And so Starry Eyes is coming out for us in LA. We're going to get to see it in about 2 weeks.
Beyond Fest.
Beyond Fest.
It's double teamed with Possession.
Possession, one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Holy
apparently.
Are you
shit.
serious?
If you've ever heard the show
We should
before.
check that film out.
I tried to ask Dennis I wanted to introduce him. He said, I think I'll just wave from the balcony at you.
Yeah.
But so that's going to be an exciting launch for LA, because has anyone seen it here yet? Really? Has it played anywhere?
Just people who attended the other festivals.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I played at Stanley.
Oh, yeah.
Where I was.
Stanley, South
that
by
was-
Fantasia. So.
That was the weekend I had the 102-degree fever, and the elevation wasn't doing well. So I didn't even get to see it there. I was really bummed.
I think why I'm excited about
to see it
that
here.
story is because it's an LA story. I think films being shot in LA is one thing, but saying something about LA excites me. I love it when somebody comments on, because it's not an easy choice to live in LA. Like, you know, people love it or hate it. That's irrelevant. It's just doing it. Yeah. If you go through that process of trying to live here, it's very tough.
I had this conversation with somebody yesterday about why I would trust somebody who's in LA more than outside of LA for like a DP. Why would I look for a DP here in LA, and not even just the location? And I said that it's because that person has sacrificed something to be here. They have said, I will leave everything I care about to go to this place because I'm that passionate about what I'm doing. And I've got respect for that. Yeah. So
sacrifice is a good word.
That's why we're all here. It is. It's a total sacrifice. My family and all of my security is there. Fuck all that. I want to make movies.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, Starry Eyes, what it does well is it sort of tells a story about how far would you go for success. And, you know, it's obviously exaggerated, but I think the soul of it is, you know, something true. And,
and that one comes out officially VOD in November?
Well, I don't know.
Or do you think? I don't know.
I sometime in between Halloween and Christmas.
Okay, good to know.
VOD sounds like a fun bird there.
Yeah.
And then American Muscle is the other one as well.
Yeah.
That's coming
That's
out.
out everywhere. VOD, home video, September 30th.
Excellent. And check out Cheap Thrills, already available, and one of my favorite films from last year.
Yeah, it's a great film. And the most important thing that, having you here, I feel like there's a lot of rumors out there swirling, and I want to just quash it here. But is it true that your stepfather, are the hands of Roy Batty in Blade Runner choking out Decker?
Yes, my father-in-law is George
you have
Herbert.
it.
Wow.
That's the craziest.
And I just discovered this weekend, I don't know why I didn't know this, but he is also the guy who fights Clint Eastwood in the parking lot in the beginning of Every Which Way But Loose.
Oh, with the orangutans.
I was like, how did I not know
That
this?
was on
Wild.
TNT every Sunday afternoon when I was a kid. I love that
No,
movie.
you blew my mind in that
Yeah.
when he was doing the stunts in the Cheap Thrills making of, and I'm watching, and then everyone's listing all the people he's worked with. I'm going, oh my god,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, he was Michael Myers. That's kind of awesome.
It's terrifying when you're dating his daughter.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're like,
Right.
this man could crush me.
yeah, but he never did.
Nope.
Good. That's good. He just crushed Decker. That's cool. Well, hopefully we've demystified a little bit about what goes into the process. I think producing the reason it has that is because there is no real answer, because you have to do everything right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is there still the magic for you in terms of, as a fan, like, when you go to film festivals with films that are yours, I mean, do you get equally excited about other films like that you have nothing to do with? I mean, is it demystified for you being in this position, or do you still love it just as much?
No, not at all. It's like, everything. Like, I think that's just my personality. Is I just get amped on stuff, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see people. I saw The Midnight Swim at Fantasia, and I had never heard of that filmmaker before, and I was just like, holy shit, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Is that the one? Jennifer LaFleur is in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a friend, and I saw it might have been your tweets, and I hadn't even heard that she was in a horror film. And then suddenly everyone was talking about it.
Yeah, and it's so I'm constantly just excited about the possibilities of cinema and genre, and anytime you see something that you haven't seen before, or experienced before, or felt before, it's totally exciting and inspirational.
What movies or filmmakers in maybe the last year or so have stood out for you?
Sarah Dina Smith from The Midnight Swim. I really loved. I love Blue Ruin, Jeremy Saulnier. Jesus, yeah, that's a good question.
Do you contact these people after you see a movie like that now as a producer? You're just like, hey, let me know what you're up to.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Lee Janik with Honeymoon, I thought there was a lot to love there. It's basically, just people that are doing interesting things with the genre.
And so you're a lover of that. I mean, we haven't usually because we usually have people like, it's Jim Renowski or Charles Band, where our first question is, you're a monster kid. Tell us about when you're young. I mean, we didn't even get there at the start, so let's end with it.
Sure.
Like, know, when you're a young guy, were you a big horror guy, or is this something that came later?
Yeah, I mean, I liked horror and a lot of sort of like punk rock movies and and docs, and I like ideas and cool things like that. But when I moved out here, I thought I'd be making genre films and sort of teen rebellion movies. I can't believe that's what I literally thought I'd be making, like Gleaming the Cube and like Suburbia.
Man.
Like I thought it would be.
Gleaming the Cube.
It's not too late, man. It's not too late for a comeback.
I told on air last week when I first got out here, the very first place that I came when I got to LA was Darby Crash's old house, because I was like, oh, this like summed it all up. And I pretty much did like the Decline of Western Civilization tour of LA. Yeah. And it's definitely not what it was back then. But
Are you a big fan of like River's Edge? I feel like you probably
that's a great
exactly, and that's probably part of the problem is like with all of our
Blu-ray, by the way. Yeah. I just found out
when we're doing casting for our films, like what you should do as a producer is look for people who are on hot TV shows,
right? But
and what I do is go River's Edge. Like we put an offer out to Ione Sky because I'm like River's Edge. Like that's a great movie. It's like nobody's heard of it.
Which film was that for that you put her out for?
I can't.
Oh, you can't say
Yeah.
it.
Can't say.
Have you geeked out? Has there been a moment with somebody you've worked with who's been in some cult film or something where you just a freak out?
Are you getting fucking Dana Ashbrook and Ray Wise in the aggression scale together? And I was just like, yes,
yeah,
because it was I feel like
is that how you got Ray in Big Ass Spider? because you'd already.
Well, Mike knew.
Yeah,
Okay.
Lynn Shay, I think, is really good friends with him, and
He's
but
great.
That was a thing. Like I hadn't told either of the actors, but Steven sure loves Twin Peaks, but for me, I was just like, that's when they first saw each other, and I was like, Bobby and Leland shaking hands right in front of me, and I was looking around this set of like 18-year-old kids, PAs and stuff, and nobody got it, and I was like,
that's cool.
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you got to hold that inner geek so you stay excited. That's cool.
Yeah.
I dig it. So cool. I mean, I'm excited to see Starry, as I'll be there with bells on. It really is. It's funny. I don't know what it is that captures our mind now about new films without seeing the trailer, but Starry Eyes, since I first heard about that was probably the one I most wanted to see. And I don't want to overhype it for myself either, but that poster was enough for me to go, okay, it just alludes to enough to be interested in a movie, And I think that's a good thing to remember now. I think we need to start scaling back how we sell things, oversell films.
That's my whole theory on marketing right now is anti-marketing.
Yeah.
Where you make the audience lean in to learn more because you're not sending 20 clips out showing everything. You're not,
because it works with filmmaking. That old analogy of Polanski and Rosemary's Baby, where you can't see around the corner and people lean in because they can't see.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, interesting.
So my next movie, I'm not going to show it to anyone, and it will be the most in-demand film I've ever made. It's like that Wu-Tang record, $1 million for one copy.
I kind of like that idea. It could work for you.
Wow. So thank you so much for coming in and enlightening us a little bit about the whole process. You're on Twitter, but I don't have your thing memorized.
At Travis Stevens.
Just your name.
Complex.
No underscores.
I was there first. I was there in 2011.
And the film company is Snowfort, right?
Correct.
Snowfort Pictures. Cool.
Yeah. So
is that just you or?
Yeah. Now I have a Jade Porter working with me, so that's awesome. We're going to be expanding this year, but for 4 years it's been one person, and it's been a struggle.
And you do not accept scripts. Just so if anyone's listening, not unsolicited, right? I saw that on the bottom of the website. Not unsolicited.
Dude, even solicited, I don't read.
Okay.
I mean, so it's like I've had scripts for like 6 months from like my best friends. And I'm like, I'll get to it. So it just is. Yeah, just tell me a log line, buy me a beer. And I'll tell you if it's worth pursuing.
That's the big trick there, guy.
Yeah,
you got it. I'll do that at Star Eyes.
So who do we have coming in next?
What's next week? Rodman Flender, the director of Idle Hands.
Nice.
And
Leprechaun.
And Leprechaun.
Which is how I met him. And also new BFF of Elric Kane, because as I told, he sat with me at a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the thing I love about Elric is he's like, he can meet somebody just randomly, and if they start talking movies, you can't.
That's why I love Steven. You're a co-producer.
4 hours
one
later,
of my new favorite people on earth.
4 hours later, I left the screening. The entire audience left.
The lights were off.
30 blocks to walk Axel to her car. Then I walked another 20 to mine. It's like 1:30 in the morning, and I drive by, and the two of them are still out front.
But the reason, I'll tell you,
the last two people still talking movies.
After trivia, it may have been a screening, but we went out to a bar, and Elric was my ride home because I didn't have a car that night.
Bad move.
And so Elric's my ride home, and he starts talking with Darren Scott about movies. And
Darren Scott's amazing.
1:30. Hey, Elric, I'm getting tired. Yeah, it's cool, Becca. One more
I'll
beer.
tell you, here's the hook. I'll tell you with Rodman. You introduced me, you just introduced me as somebody who had done Leprechaun. And I'm not going to lie. I'll tell him to his face, my brain went, oh, cool. And then I kind of just moved on. And I was ready to just keep saying goodbye to people. And then you said Idle Hands. I said, oh, that's cool. And then the moment where he suddenly is just like, oh, that's fascinating, is Corman. He was working with Corman. Corman left to make Frankenstein Unbound in Romania and left for a couple years. And in the time he left, Rodman ran everything.
Oh, yeah.
So all the movies that were being made were him. So he's the only one I've ever heard this about. Like he became Roger Corman Jr. while they all went away. So I was like, now that's fascinating. Hey, if we can, we'll strike it from the record. But suddenly you start talking about that and you're like, oh my God, these are the kind of stories. LA is an amazing place if you like good stories. Yeah. There's nothing. Yeah.
There's so much we have to talk about.
Yeah. This is just part one with Travis. Travis will be all right, all the best with all the movies. We're excited to see them.
Thanks so much, man. Really
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for keeping the flame alive.
Definitely. Absolutely.